Chapter 361, The Test of the Paladin, Purifying Stratholme 4. The heroes outside were all dumbfounded. They had just convicted their teacher of treason. Treason. In this world, isn't that the highest punishment? They had just fought a seemingly excellent battle, and now they were so arrogant? Lightbringer Uther was shocked. Treason? Are you crazy, Arthas? Arthas's expression grew colder. Do I seem crazy, Lord Uther? As the Crown Prince, I hereby relieve you of your command and suspend all your duties in the Knights of the Silver Hand. Uther was completely stunned. Deprived of all his rights? The Knights of the Silver Hand, who had rushed to the Holy City to support Lord Uther, were equally shocked. There was an uproar among the ranks. If Master Uther's duties were dismissed, what would they do? Was the Knights of the Silver Hand going to be disbanded? Miss Jaina Proudmoore was also shocked and said worriedly, Arthas, you can't just do this. Arthas shook his head. Sorry, Jaina. I've made up my mind. He then raised the hammer of justice high and roared, Those of you who are willing to save this land, follow me. As for the others, disappear from my sight. There was no other way. That was all Arthas could say. He couldn't command the Knights of the Silver Hand. In this medieval world, although he was the Crown Prince and future king of the kingdom of Lordaeron, the kingdom was composed of a series of nobles. Most of the power was concentrated in the hands of the territorial nobles. Unless there were special reasons, the king could not forcibly recruit soldiers from the noble territories to fight. The troops in the territory were directly loyal to their respective lords and then to the king. It was somewhat like the ancient vassal enfeoffment system. Uther was also quite special. The title of Lightbringer was not easily earned, let alone a posthumous title given at will. During the First War, many priests were killed fighting the tribes due to a lack of preparation for the cruelty of war. Archbishop Alonsus Fall, head of priests in Northshire, began training Lordaeron's most loyal knights. The first knight to be dubbed a paladin was Uther. He assisted the archbishop and single-handedly established the Knights of the Silver Hand. When the Second War broke out, Uther fought alongside his comrades, repelling the forces of Horde commander Orgrim Doomhammer and leading the alliance to victory in the final battle at the Dark Portal. After the Horde retreated, Uther participated in the reconstruction of Stormwind City and the resettlement of the wounded and sick. He was a legendary figure in the Knights. Moreover, he had the reputation of being chivalrous and righteous across the continent. He was a powerful leader and a spiritual guide with many followers. It could be said without hesitation that if Uther called for the establishment of an independent country, more than half of the people would swear to follow him without hesitation. Therefore, Arthas did not think that these knights would follow him after Uther was relieved of his position as the leader of the Knights of the Silver Hand. The dismissal was just an order from the kingdom's policy, but it did not relieve the knights of their determination to follow Uther. However, Arthas believed that there would definitely be a group of people who would stay behind to follow him. The knights were not pure. There were noble soldiers joining, and some knights had their hometowns around Stratholme. Once the Holy City fell, their relatives would be in danger. So, no matter what, there would be a group of people left behind. Uther the Lightbringer was very disappointed, but he didn't scold his disciple for being foolish. He just shook his head and said calmly, Son, you have just crossed a terrible boundary, Arthas. I hope that. In the future, you will not regret today's decision, he declared, turning to face the knights behind him. If you want to stay, stay. But if you don't want to be stained with the blood of your compatriots, leave with me. The Knights of the Silver Hand erupted into chaos, quickly dividing into two factions. Nearly 70% of the knights and some soldiers decided to leave with Uther, while the remaining 30% chose to stay and follow the prince. Skye found it difficult to comprehend. They just left like that? Uther is Alsace's mentor. Isn't abandoning him akin to being an accomplice to a killer? It's loyalty, Peggy Carter sighed deeply. In medieval Europe, knights were renowned for their absolute loyalty. Even if they made a mistake, they would raise their swords without hesitation for their nobles. Loyalists and knights could not break their oaths. Mr. Wayne nodded solemnly. They are paladins of the Knights of the Silver Hand. loyal to the kingdom of Lord Aeron. This loyalty extends to the current crown prince and future king. Their loyalty prevents them from striking at their liege, but their belief in the holy light stops them from raising arms against civilians. Faced with such contradictions, they can only leave, see King Arthur added. And what about Uther? Skye asked, still puzzled. The same applies to Uther, Duke explained. Loyalty prevents him from attacking the king's son, and the holy light forbids him from killing civilians. Attacking Alsace would only cause internal strife. Facing the threat of natural disasters, he can only leave, preserving his combat strength. Oh, Skye said, finally understanding. He chose the lives of the majority, Bronsky, known as Abhorrence, remarked. Everyone fell silent, contemplating the situation. In the illusion, Jaina, who had accompanied them, also turned away slowly. Steve felt a pang in his heart and asked tremulously, Jaina? Miss Jaina Proudmoore paused, but did not turn around. Her head, covered by a cloak, was slightly lowered. She shook her head. I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this. Alsace was speechless. Skye was furious. Damn, I can't stand this. Jaina is Alsace's lover. How can she just leave him? Shouldn't she stand by her lover in times like this? Even if she can't stop him, she could at least make his struggling, desperate soul feel less alone. Everyone else remained silent. Duke sighed. Some believed that Jaina's departure was the final straw that broke Alsace's heart, pushing him towards his dark fate. If she had stayed, perhaps Alsace could have retained his paladin's heart instead of becoming a vengeful, power-hungry death knight. Steve, inhabiting Alsace's body, felt the depth of this betrayal. His lover's words mirrored Uther's, delivering a fatal blow to Alsace. In his most desperate and helpless moment, no one supported the young prince's choice, leaving him in endless pain. The rain soaked the prince's blonde hair, and his handsome face was etched with despair. Darkness, endless darkness, surrounded him. Steve felt his heart being consumed by this darkness, a maddening, almost hopeless silence. No, 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 he cried out. End of this chapter. Chapter 3 and 62, The Test of the Paladin, Purifying Stratholme, 5. What followed was a tragic scene, one that many superheroes found too harrowing to watch, especially the women. Peggy Carter clung tightly to Steve, who was on the ground, shaking his head incessantly. Sweat poured from his forehead as he repeatedly yelled, No, 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 no. Peggy understood Steve's pain all too well at this moment. They were all extremely shocked outside, but it was nothing compared to what Steve, trapped in the body of Arthas, was experiencing. Witnessing the impending slaughter firsthand, his heart was breaking. Without Uther's supervision and guidance, and without Jaina's support, no one could curb Arthas's overwhelming desire for revenge. Soon, he emerged from the despair of his lover's departure, and his once cloudy eyes became steely and crazed again. Everyone seems to be ready. Remember, these people have been infected by the terrible plague and will die soon. We must cleanse Stratholme to protect the rest of the people from the scourge. Let us go, brave warriors, he shouted, raising the hammer of justice. The holy light flickering on it seemed dimmer. Steve, trapped inside, wanted to stop it, but he couldn't resist due to the restrictions set by Duke. He could only watch as Arthas led the army into the holy city, knowing the massacre that was about to unfold. Arthas finally put his plan into action. He ordered the soldiers to slaughter the innocent citizens infected with the plague and burn all the buildings in the city to the ground. At this time, the innocent citizens of Stratholme were unaware of the impending disaster. Seeing the arrival of the prince, countless citizens cheered. Praise the holy light, it is Prince Arthas! Great, you are finally here. Many people in the city are infected with serious diseases. Can you help us? An innocent citizen ran up to the prince, excitedly asking for help. However, his excitement was met with the hammer of justice held high by the prince. Arthas shook his head, his eyes cold and stern. I can only let you die without pain, he said. The citizens of Stratholme were stunned and asked in disbelief, What? What are you talking about, Prince? No, this is impossible. Oh no, do not. One cry came from the innocent citizens before they died, and the other from Steve inside. He raised the hammer of justice high and brought it down on the innocent citizen's head. Red blood and white brain matter splattered all over him. He could even smell the nauseating stench of the blood. People outside saw Arthas raising the hammer, but Steve knew that it was he, himself, who had killed the innocent citizen in front of him. Although he couldn't control his body, it was his own hand that had raised the hammer and smashed the heads of innocent citizens. A man who had always upheld the concept of justice could not accept this cruel reality. After killing the innocent, the holy light on the hammer of justice weakened again. The rest of the citizens of Stratholme were all dumbfounded, staring blankly at the once benevolent prince, wondering what had happened. Those holding children saw their children fall to the ground and cry without realizing it. Citizens who were eating dropped their food in shock. Looking at the puzzled eyes of the citizens, Arthas said coldly, "This is just the beginning." At that moment, a huge, terrifying figure about 3 meters tall appeared. A demon, absolutely demonic, huge dark purple bat wings, a skull-like face, and 2 backward curving demonic horns on his forehead, huge devil claws, and the recurved joints of the legs, and hooves that could belong to either a sheep or a cow. Everything about him screamed that he was the big villain, the mastermind behind the scenes, Mal'Ganis. This image? Most people saw it for the first time, but for Diana, Doutson, Carlos, Logan, Victor, and Samir, who had participated in the First World War and the beheading of the god of war Ares, it was all too familiar. Back then, Duke had transformed into a similar image to battle Ares. Although, in the end, Ares only suffered minor injuries from the bombardment, thanks to the armor he was wearing. He was nearly killed when a punch went through his body, but he managed to survive by copying Wolverine's healing abilities just in time. Duke, on the other hand, emerged with a much darker and more imposing image, resembling Illidan, which made him appear far more formidable than Mal'Ganis. A group of onlookers stared at Duke with curiosity. Could it be that he acquired this ability during his astral travels? The concept of an astral world seemed incredible to them. Mal'Ganis sneered, his face full of sarcasm. "Yes, this is just the beginning. I've been waiting for you for a long time, young prince. I am Mal'Ganis." "It's you." Arthas's eyes flashed with anger as he entered the field. Steve, who was also present, felt a shock in his heart. This was bad. He was almost overwhelmed by negative emotions. Mal'Ganis laughed. "That's right, it's me. As you can see, your people now belong to me. I will turn these citizens into undead, house by house, extinguishing the fire of life in Stratholme forever." Gripping his hammer tightly, Steve growled, "I won't let you succeed, Mal'Ganis. I'd rather end their lives with my own hands than watch them become your servants." "Very well, then let's see who is faster, you or me." Mal'Ganis laughed coldly before disappearing in a flash. Steve clenched his hammer, his teeth grinding and blood staining the corners of his mouth. "Mal'Ganis will definitely send Scourge minions to attack us. Warriors, for the sake of the innocent behind us, we must shoulder the responsibility of destroying them. Hold this position to prevent anyone from escaping the Holy City. I will lead the other troops to purify Stratholme." "Roar! Obey, your highness." "With your highness. Battle! Fight! Fight!" At this moment, none of Arthas's soldiers noticed the change in him. Although he seemed more manic and ruthless than before, he also appeared more courageous. The soldiers were relieved by the prince's transformation, as it lifted the burden from their hearts. All they had to do was follow orders, especially in such dire circumstances. Arthas, leading a group of elite soldiers, charged into the Holy City, determined to hunt down Mal'Ganis. Meanwhile, Mal'Ganis led the Scourge to destroy Stratholme, turning the infected citizens into the walking dead at an alarming rate. To prevent the rise of more undead and to curb the Scourge's strength, Arthas and Mal'Ganis engaged in a gruesome contest of killing. Steve yelled, "No!" End of this chapter. Chapter 363, The Test of the Paladin, Purifying Stratholme 6. Peggy Carter wiped the sweat from Steve's brow while hugging him tightly. Steve, even in his sleep, couldn't stop muttering, "No, no, no," struggling and shaking his head. The superheroes around him could feel his fear, despair, and the deathly silence that haunted him. They could vividly picture Arthas mercilessly killing innocent people. Madness, paranoia, revenge, and killing. The entire holy city of Stratholme was stained blood red, and the stench of blood, mixed with the smell of charred wood and corpses, was overwhelming. When Arthas demolished buildings in Stratholme, what emerged from the collapsed houses wasn't always a diseased resident, but often an abomination or a necromancer. The superheroes outside were deeply shocked, witnessing the power of the paladin profession for the first time. Perhaps it wasn't just the paladin profession that was powerful, but the varied combination of abilities that allowed a paladin to fight, resist, heal, and purify. This versatility left everyone in awe. "It seems that Steve's shield is going to be thrown away," Bucky joked, causing everyone to smile. The Red Star shield symbolized Captain America, but now it seemed he might have to choose a hammer instead. This is the Retribution Paladin, which focuses on attacking. Additionally, there are protection and holy systems, both of which use shields. The protection system focuses on defense and counterattack, similar to the Spartans. The holy system focuses on healing and purifying negative states, Duke explained. Of course, this is just a game. It's not like you can't use a shield in one hand and a hammer in the other to deal punishment. Warriors have a gladiator talent where they wield a shield in one hand and a weapon in the other, delivering powerful attacks. Duke had played this talent, although it was short-lived. Every time he joined a group, he would be kicked out halfway, despite being the top in DPS. He couldn't understand why. Maybe the tank felt his style was being overshadowed? "I'm the only one who can play shields. You can't," might have been the reason. In the game, talents, equipment, and playability are distinguished by separating weapons, but in reality, it's not necessary. A paladin can heal with a staff and still deliver punishment skills with a shield and a one-handed weapon, though it might not be as comfortable as using a two-handed weapon. How to use and feel comfortable depends on Steve's own habits and preferences. Thor breathed a sigh of relief. His status as the Hammer God was still secure. In Stratholme, the killing continued. During the massacre of civilians, Arthas's extremely depressed and sad mental state made him doubt the holy light and his faith. Eventually, the immense pressure and pain caused his spirit to collapse. From a prince yearning for the holy light, he gradually became an avenger seeking all power. The house behind him was engulfed in flames, the wooden structure collapsing under the heat. In front of the sea of flames, Arthas tightly held the hammer of justice. A real man never looks at the flames exploding behind him. The holy light no longer shone on the blood-stained hammer. The name of justice had long since faded away. "Ah!" Steve yelled into the sky. Behind him were the attendants who followed the prince closely. Seeing the prince screaming in pain, the attendants also felt sorrow. They knew that His Royal Highness had no choice but was doomed to bear this pain. This was a conspiracy, and everyone could see it. This is Mal'Ganis' conspiracy. However, no one can see the abyss that lies behind it all. In this scheme, no one is spared. Only kill. There is no time to waste. Competing with this dreaded Demon King, competing to kill, the evil thoughts of the devil are outrageous. They are the followers of the prince, vowing to follow him to face hell. After Neng, Steve turned his head and looked at the few attendants who were still following him. Killing all the way, the number of attendants had been reduced from 50 to 10, and almost everyone was injured. Without any words or the slightest encouragement, Steve just looked at the attendants silently, with boundless determination in his eyes. Ahead was the last area, and Mal'Ganis could only be there. The prince tightly grasped the sledgehammer, turned around, and strode forward. Sure enough, the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis was waiting for him in the last area with a mocking smile on his face. Seeing this expression, Steve was burning with anger. That's right, Alsace was like this, and so was Steve. The endless killings had made Steve furious, and he wanted to tear apart the culprit in front of him. Holding the hammer tightly, he strode towards Mal'Ganis. "Now, we should make a deal, Mal'Ganis. Just you and me, one-on-one." The goal had been achieved. He couldn't die here. Mal'Ganis sneered, "Gather your troops and come to Northrend to find me. There, we will fight, and your true destiny will be revealed. You have been brave, but unfortunately, this is not where we should end. Your journey has only just begun, young prince." Steve was enraged. Did Mal'Ganis think he could escape? Angrily, he picked up the sledgehammer and rushed towards Mal'Ganis. "Go to hell, demon! What an unlovable prince! Let's fight!" A fierce battle of light and shadow ensued. making the superheroes almost unable to open their eyes. The golden holy light collided with the green rotting bug swarm and the black demonic energy, creating special effects more spectacular than blockbuster movies. Everyone was once again shocked by Alsace's power. If they met him, it was estimated that only a few could defeat this crazed prince. Unfortunately, Mal'Ganis wanted to run away. After releasing the sleep spell, he escaped, saying that he would fight the prince in Northrend. No, damn it! The enemy's escape made Steve roar wildly, his arms outstretched in fury. After a while, the catharsis was over. Like an angry lion, the murderous prince waved his hand. Reorganize the army, gather forces, and attack Northrend. The massacre of the city was the most fatal blow to Alsace. The real transformation of the once kind and righteous Prince of Lordaeron had already begun. This was a poisonous thorn deep in Alsace's heart. Although he dared not say that he regretted it, he felt extremely guilty. This feeling was very strange, like a person who eats a toad to save his life when he is extremely hungry. Although he didn't regret it afterward, the feeling of nausea could not be eliminated. So far, Alsace's heart had been occupied by darkness, and his reason had disappeared. When he left Stratholme behind, he also left most of his humanity in the ruins and scorched earth. He vowed to destroy the Dreadlord who had committed many crimes. To avenge the mastermind behind the plague and all of this, he would do whatever it takes. End of this chapter. Chapter 364, The Test of the Paladin, Purifying Stratholme. I will hunt you down to the ends of the earth. Do you hear me? To the ends of the earth. Steve held up the hammer of justice and roared to the sky. Then he ordered the entire city of Stratholme to be set ablaze. The once glorious, holy city turned into a city of scorched earth overnight. Flames engulfed the historic city of Lordaeron. Steve did not stay to watch it burn to ashes. Time was running out. He needed to catch up and head to Northrend. The army roared in and then roared away. When the billowing dust and smoke raised by the army disappeared at the horizon, the vision of the scene was over. The purification of Stratholme had ended. Next came the northern expedition to Northrend, betrayal, patricide, and crowning as the Lich King. As the scene ended, heavy rain began to pour from the sky, as if nature itself did not want this historic holy city to be reduced to ashes. Predictably, the rain would extinguish the flames of Stratholme, leaving behind tens of thousands of mutilated innocent bodies and the dismembered limbs of the undead. These remnants were the only evidence of the previous massacre. Although the scene was over, videos continued to flash rapidly, narrating the story that followed. In Northrend, driven by hatred, Arthas found and picked up the cursed sword Frostmourne, using it to kill Mal'Ganis. At this moment, Sea King Arthur and Mera stared wide-eyed. This sword? Mera asked. That's right, it's the sword I used to cast, Arthur replied. The superheroes were dumbfounded. Perhaps the sword eventually fell into Duke's hands. He traveled in the astral plane and may have participated in the battle that ultimately defeated Arthas, taking possession of the fabled cursed sword. Under the torment of the cursed sword, Arthas finally succumbed to the Lich King, and the Prince of Lordaeron fell. Upon returning to his camp, Arthas easily slew the unsuspecting soldiers and transformed their corpses into scourge warriors. An undead army completely obedient to him was born immediately. They would be used by Arthas as a new force to destroy Lordaeron and realize the Lich King's ambition, serving the master of Frostmourne. In reality, the superheroes were dumbfounded. Was this how one directly transformed into an undead? They looked at Duke one by one, realizing this was the legendary second stage. At this time, Arthas had learned dark psychic magic, and with the help of the cursed sword, he no longer needed plague poison to easily resurrect the dead. 3 months later, surrounded by bells celebrating victory, people cheering, and petals flying in the sky, Arthas returned to Lordaeron as a hero. Under the stunned eyes of everyone around, Arthas thrust Frostmourne into the chest of his father, King Tyrrhenus. The old king collapsed on the throne, and the bloody crown rolled to the floor. Anyone who tried to stop the prince fell to the sword of Frostmourne, and just like that, the prince disappeared into the chaos of the capital. The royal capital of Lordaeron, once the brightest pearl in the human world, had turned into a silent wasteland where only death and despair remained. He killed his mentor Uther and destroyed his kingdom single-handedly. After continuous battles, he returned to Northrend to become the new Lich King and sat on the frozen throne forever. In the protracted battle, he defeated the old Lich King, after he stuck Frostmourne into the ice. Soon, a giant two-fingered dragon exuding cold air climbed out of the ice and soared into the sky. As the camera flashed, there were countless black natural disasters densely packed below. Seeing this scene, the superheroes were once again shocked. Especially Sea King Arthur and Mera. The image of Arthas was exactly what Duke turned into when he performed Frostmourne in the Lost Kingdom. Mera felt a chill run down her spine. After experiencing the Battle of the Chapel, the attack on Scourge's Gate, and the epilogue, the Frozen Throne, Arthas fell. Frostmourne, Arnie was split in half, and as it broke, Arthas' eyes reverted to their human state. In the final scene, as Arthas lay defeated, a somber melody played. The spirit of his father, King Tyrannus, appeared before him. "Father, is everything over?" Arthas asked, his voice filled with despair. King Tyrannus gently caressed his son's hand, his voice devoid of resentment. "It's over. Kingship has no eternity, my son. Before me, there is only darkness," Arthas whispered. His hands fell heavily onto the ice, and his pupils gradually faded. His eyes rolled back, and the hand that had held his father's soul dropped lifelessly. Tyrannus slowly reached out and closed his son's eyes. Witnessing this, the superheroes were moved to tears, especially the women. Skye, overwhelmed with emotion, couldn't help but wipe away his tears. Eventually, Jaina Proudmoore appeared on the screen. At the edge of a fountain in Dalaran, she tossed a gold wishing coin into the water. A close-up revealed the inscription, "Arthas, my love, please come back to me." The scene brought fresh tears to many eyes. Before he died, his eyes changed back. "Does that mean his conscience returned?" Flash Barry Allen asked. "He personally killed Ner'zhul and his own kind personality. He was obviously unwilling before he died, right?" Mira shook her head. "This is a tragic hero," Mr. Wayne suddenly said, drawing everyone's attention. "You think he's a hero?" someone asked. "He can be seen as a very characteristic and impactful prince of tragedy. If the scenes restored by Duke do not bring his subjective feeling, his personality traits are heroic at the beginning, making him seem full of justice. But in the end, he became super evil, betraying and killing his father and mentor. However, there is a premise. Everything he did was for the people," Mr. Wayne explained. "Yes or no, I believe Steve feels the most," Duke said, snapping his fingers and pulling his mind out of the illusion, returning to Steve's body. The moment he returned, Steve bent over abruptly, vomiting food, bile, and even a wisp of blood. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with boundless darkness. Duke frowned, stepped forward, and placed his hand on Steve's head. The soft, holy light shone down, like the warm sun, instantly dispelling the darkness in Steve's heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 365, The Endless Path of Purification. "What happened to me just now?" Steve raised his head in confusion. "You're crazy." "What?" He was a little dazed, panting a few times. "Well, you almost turned into a hydra," Duke shrugged. "Paladins are beings that pursue the holy light. They are pure and righteous, but also very dangerous. Once they go astray, they embark on an evil and dark future, becoming Death Knights. Their deadly enemy is like Arthas. So, do you want to continue?" Steve was silent for a few seconds, then said firmly, "Yes." Peggy Carter looked at her boyfriend nervously. It was like this for the first time. Could it work next? "Good, but you have to pay attention. There will be no interruption in the next scene in the illusion until you make the right choice to save Stratholme." "What is the right choice, and what is the end?" Steve asked, the answer too confusing. "After you get the inheritance of the Paladin." Duke explained. "The inheritance of the Paladin is in the body of Arthas. When you save Stratholme, you will definitely get the inheritance of the Paladin." Steve nodded. "Understood. I will not intervene in the next scene, Illusion. You may continue this endless road of purification over and over again. Of course, this depends on your will, whether you can completely control this body, using your will to take control of the situation. I will activate the restriction, and you will be able to compete with Arthas's will for control of the body. But it should be noted that you do not need to completely control this body." Steve frowned. "As long as you can guide him, make the right choice, save the innocent people of Stratholme, and get his approval. You can also get the inheritance of the paladin. Steve understood. That is to say, I have two ways to go. One is to completely control the body, use my own judgment to issue orders and reverse the tragedy of Stratholme. The other is to guide Arthas's spirit and destroy this conspiracy. Not bad. Then can I tell him about Mal'Gannis's trick? Everyone rolled their eyes in silence. Duke was even more speechless. This is just a fantasy scene created by me. Arthas is not a real person. He just follows the set procedures. You can understand it as a robot. Even if you tell him about Mal'Gannis' conspiracy and tell him that his family is not dead, he can't hear it. Okay, Steve smiled, realizing there was no shortcut. Before that, I want to ask, what kind of person do you think Arthas is? The superheroes looked at Steve in unison, wanting to know his thoughts after this personal experience. Steve hesitated and sighed after a long time. He is a man destined for tragedy. Oh, how do you say? Duke smiled slightly. Arthas was indeed a noble paladin dedicated to his duties before encountering the scourge of the undead. As a prince, he was brave and selfless. But when the plague broke out, and Arthas saw that the peat ate the polluted food and turned into undead soldiers, who in turn slaughtered other innocent compatriots, the young prince was furious. He could not tolerate anyone using such cruel means to persecute his people and destroy their homeland. When responsibility and honor were distorted into hatred, Arthas had already fallen into a dark abyss. It can be said that being young and inexperienced were the fatal flaws of Arthas. He had accomplished a lot, smashing the threat of the Black Dragon Cyronox and the Orc Blackrock clan, and killing Kel'Thuzad. These two battles made him a little arrogant. At that time, Arthas didn't know, and he didn't think about what kind of opponent he was facing. He firmly believed that as the future leader of the kingdom and the paladin of the Silver Hand, he was fully capable of handling this matter. Of course, he did have incomparable courage and confidence, but it's a pity that all of this was just a trap set by the Lich King. Arthas was still too young after all. King Tyrannus has pinned all his hopes on him. There are conflicts between experience and ability, and the heavy burden on his shoulders puts too much pressure on him. The veteran Kel'Thuzad and Mal'Gannis took advantage of this Achilles heel and led Arthas down the road of no return, Steve concluded. The superheroes clapped their hands, acknowledging the succinct and insightful conclusion. You're right, Duke said slowly, settling onto the sofa and propping his chin with one hand. When I was traveling in the astral world, I witnessed the purification of Stratholme with my own eyes. I didn't intervene. I watched it unfold as a bystander. While public opinion condemned this tragedy, I pondered, did Arthas do something wrong by purifying Stratholme? Yes, did he do something wrong? The group of superheroes also asked themselves this question. Killing people or massacring his own civilians, such a cold-blooded prince, of course, it is wrong. 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 But there were more Lordaeron civilians behind him. If he chose to save them, no, he had no time to save them at all. Mal'Gannis would not give him time. He would directly transform the civilians into undead, forcing the young prince to make a choice. In my opinion, the corruption of Arthas was both an accident and inevitable, Duke said. Oh, what do you mean? Diana asked. From the perspective of outsiders, that is us now, what was wrong? Purification was the best option under the circumstances, Duke explained. The people in front of you are about to become undead and start killing others. Should you kill them first to reduce the loss of your own troops, or wait for them to become undead and then try to save them? Obviously, the former is a better choice, Duke continued. Arthas hated the scourge and despised his own powerlessness. The holy light could not save his people, so he sought power himself. Thus, he was bewitched by the Lich King and took up Frostmourne, leading to his further corruption. In theory, if Jaina had returned to the Kirin Tor and sent reinforcements, the paladins and priests could have saved a small group of people, but the casualties would have been greater. Mal'Gannis would have accelerated the transformation, forcing Arthas to make a choice. Should he kill the innocent civilians who were still weak, or wait until they became more powerful undead? It seems that the answer is clear again, Duke said. In short, massacring the city was not an entirely unacceptable choice. But after Arthas massacred the city, he made mistake after mistake. First, he ventured alone, then he was lured by Frostmourne, and he insisted on abandoning the Holy Light and his teammates. Each misstep led to further madness after drawing the sword. Everyone fell silent, contemplating the tragic tale of Arthas. End of this chapter. Chapter 366, Paladin Steve. In the end, even the pursuit of power surpassed his own humanity. He finally drew Frostmourne and extended the weapon towards his father. Reflecting on it, the corruption of Arthas was both an accident and an inevitability. From an omniscient perspective, we knew that the plague was unavoidable at that time, but the characters within the story did not. Uther and Jaina believed they could save the people, while Arthas thought they couldn't. It's like rescuing people after a fire. In reality, most people perish. Some believe they should attempt to save them, while others think it's futile and that trying might result in more deaths. As the Crown Prince, Arthas was supposed to protect his people. What did he do? The slaughter of the city might have been justifiable, but he should have immediately requested assistance from Dalaran. At the very least, it was not wise to venture north alone. The massacre by Arthas did not cause the loss of Lordaeron. It also completely resolved the issue of Stratholme's plague leakage. However, after this incident, Arthas's behavior changed due to his extreme choices. He went north alone and even took up Frostmourne, becoming a slave to power. Judging from the final result, Arthas was wrong, Duke said, because he became the new Lich King. After summarizing, Duke glanced at Steve. Your situation is very similar to his. You are also pursuing power. The only difference is that Arthas didn't have anyone stronger or wiser than him to guide him. Mara made a face of disgust. Secondly, the power you are chasing is what I chose for you, and it is a power of light, whereas Arthas was passively pushed into the dark abyss by demons. Steve's mind trembled suddenly. It does seem to be the case. You have a strong backing to ensure that you will not go astray, but in the endless trials, you still have the possibility of corruption. Once you are corrupted, I will not hesitate to kill you, including in the future. It will be the same. After speaking, Duke waved his hand, and Steve fainted again in Peggy Carter's arms. His spiritual consciousness re-entered the illusion of Arthas. Start! The scene illusion started again. This time, Steve sensed the difference. He could influence Arthas's behavior. But unfortunately, Arthas's strength was immense, and his spirit was incredibly tenacious. Steve failed, and he once again raised the hammer. Plot, game over, and reincarnation was about to start again. No. The first time, the second time, the third time, the 10th time. He failed 10 times. He had controlled the spirit of Arthas, but the stumbling and inconsistent actions in the middle made the team purifying Stratholme unable to unify, which eventually led to the failure of the plot. He found that it was too difficult to control Arthas's spiritual choices. It wasn't that it was hard to change Arthas's mind, but the situation didn't allow for optimism. Mal'Ganis watched intently from the sidelines. Unless he could control Arthas's thoughts from the very beginning, there would inevitably be chaos along the way, allowing Mal'Ganis to exploit loopholes again. Therefore, he had to control Arthas's body from the very beginning, so he decided to go the first way. The second road was easy and convenient, but there were too many variables, and Arthas's will would prevail at any time, especially when he was angry. As soon as he appeared on the stage, he would occupy Arthas's body, and the dove would occupy the magpie's nest. Fortunately, after each reincarnation, Steve would suppress one more point. After the start of a new round, he directly squeezed out his original will and took control himself. All but Duke, Diana, and Peggy Carter went to rest. After all, repeated behaviors are too monotonous and boring. Moreover, after reincarnating 10 times, a day had passed and everyone was a little tired. They decided to have a meal and sleep, waiting for the moment when Steve would become a paladin. In this regard, they had no doubts. It's important to understand that Steve's tenacity isn't the only factor at play here. Duke has a plan to promote Steve to a paladin. Otherwise, why would he create such a complicated scenario? It's not just for the amusement of watching Steve fail. There must be a way through this, and it's likely not as dangerous as Duke has suggested. Of course, there will be challenges, but it's not a life-or-death situation. Teacher, you are here. Hearing the rhythmic neighing of horses and the thunderous roar of hooves on the ground, Arthas knew that Lightbringer, Uther, had arrived. Uther was slightly taken aback as he rode up. Ever since his personally trained disciple eliminated the threat of the Black Dragon Cyronox and the Orc Blackstone tribe in one fell swoop, earning his praise, things had changed. Although Arthas still adhered to the duties of a paladin, over time, he began to see Uther's methods as too pedantic and conservative. As his pride grew, Arthas gradually distanced himself from Uther, no longer calling him mentor, but addressing him by his title or position. This was the first time in a long while that he had called him mentor. However, the tone seemed different. Jaina, who had followed Arthas, also noticed the change in her beloved. She didn't understand why the prince, who had been so full of anger on their journey, now seemed filled with a sense of powerlessness upon arriving at Stratholme and hearing the soldiers' reports. Uther paused for a moment, then dismounted. At this time, Arthas also turned around. The two faced each other. A shiver ran down Uther's spine. What had happened to the aggressive and heroic prince? His eyes were now a dull gray. Has the severity of the plague exceeded our expectations? Uther, with his experience, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. We're too late. The entire population of Stratholme has been infected. They may look normal now, but it's only a matter of time before they become undead. What? Uther was shocked. Master, what should I do? Arthas asked. In reality, Duke smiled. That's right. As a commander, he doesn't need to be proficient in all skills. He has professionals around him to handle things. Steve is quite enlightened. He finally understands that no man can be omnipotent. Of course, I am omnipotent, he added, praising himself. Diana rolled her eyes in exasperation. Peggy Carter looked directly at Arthas. Steve? Are you all ready, Steve? Yes, the next part of the plot will change, Duke said. Uther was silent for a few seconds. Do everything possible to save innocent people. How many people are there in Stratholme? Excluding the soldiers who left, there are still about 10,000 civilians in the Holy City, Uther replied. And how many clergy do we have? Uther frowned. There are probably around 2,000 paladins and priests who came this time. Hey! End of this chapter. Chapter 367. Paladin Steve. Hey! Steve sighed heavily. Mentor, how much holy water do we have? Uther remained silent for a long moment before finally responding with a sigh. 0. They had traveled long distances to provide support, and carrying holy water to cure the plague was not feasible. Although paladins could create holy water, they were fighters, not doctors. The information they received indicated that a plague had broken out in the holy city of Stratholme. Given the city's importance, they rushed to help without much preparation. The medical troops were hurrying behind them. While mages had teleportation gates, these gates were unstable during this period and couldn't teleport an entire team directly. Only high-level magicians could manage such feats, and teleporting a 1,000-man army would drain the mana of even the most powerful magicians. This didn't include mounts or horses. Teleporting a warhorse consumed as much mana as teleporting 10 soldiers. Then, please guide me, instructor. How do we treat these thousands of citizens? Steve lowered his head slightly and made a standard knight's chest salute. This action shocked Jaina, Uther, their followers, and the entire team behind them. They didn't know what had happened, but it seemed His Royal Highness had changed. Of course, we must treat them as soon as possible to ensure as many citizens as possible survive, Uther said. Then, Mentor, how many citizens infected with the plague can one paladin cure? Steve asked again, calculated at the level of a mid-level paladin. Paladins were divided according to their strength: entry-level, low-level, mid-level, high-level, and hero-level. The first 5 saints, Uther Lightbringer, Tyrion Fordring, Sidon Dathrohan, Turalion, and Gavinrad Doom, were top paladins. However, only Uther and Fordring had reached the hero level, and Fordring had barely entered it. Sidon Dathrohan was high level, Gavinrad Doom was mid-range high level, and Turalion might become hero tier later, but was high tier now. The Knights of the Silver Hand were an elite team among Holy Knights, with a minimum strength requirement of mid-level. The rest of the low-level paladins filled other paladin troops or legions, making the Silver Hand the elite of the elite. Uther weighed the question and said, if it's just a mild plague infection, A mid-level paladin can heal 20 people. For a moderate plague, maybe only about 5. Severe infections can't be cured. He shook his head helplessly. Even he couldn't guarantee curing severe cases. If we want to maintain combat power against the undead, how many mildly infected people can a mid-level paladin heal? Steve asked again. 5 mildly infected people. Any more, and the mid-level paladin will lose the ability to fight, Uther said through gritted teeth. Then, Mentor, how many mid-level and high-level knights do you have in your team? I'll start with mine. I have 500 paladins, 100 high-level knights, 200 mid-level knights, and 300 low-level knights, Steve said. 300 mid-level, 100 high-level, Uther replied. Priests had the same algorithm as paladins. Their total strength this time was just over 5,000. Uther brought over 3,000, and Arthas had 2,000, but only 1,000 were knights. The remaining 1,000 were warriors. Jaina's team included 50 mages and a team of 100 stalkers, with more than a dozen sacrificed while spying on the news. The total force was about 300 people. After this question-and-answer session, Uther's expression became grim. Low-level and high-level don't count, Steve said. Low-level paladins could only protect themselves in the battle against the undead, and high-level paladins had to maintain their combat effectiveness. The paladins had to maintain a high degree of vigilance, especially when treating the middle-level infected. They had to be prepared for emergencies, such as sneak attacks from undead hiding in the shadows or sudden transformations of citizens into undead. 500 middle-level infected, with each paladin treating 5. That's only 100 peep. Lee, we have to abandon the remaining 400, Steve declared, causing an uproar among the troops. This, someone stammered. More than 400, another voice echoed in disbelief. The integrity of the paladins does not allow such a tragic thing to happen, one paladin protested. But we really don't have enough strength, another admitted reluctantly. Uther frowned, unable to refute Alsace's calculation. We have plenty of time, he began, but Steve interrupted with a sneer. Really? Mentor, do you think we still have enough time? Uther fell silent again. He was unaware that Mal'Ganis, the Dreadlord, was inside Stratholme, ready for battle. But even he knew they were running out of time. The entire continent was in danger, with orcs, undead, necromancers, dark wizards, and demons lurking in the background. They were stirring up chaos, and time was not on their side. This was a conspiracy, an overt one. After Kel'Thuzad was killed, the conspiracy became blatant. Stratholme could not be left alone. If they did nothing, Lordaeron would lose half its land to the undead, directly threatening the royal city. They had no choice but to act, even if it meant falling into a trap. Teacher, do you know? Ever since I killed Kel'Thuzad in Andorhal, I have had a hunch that Mal'Ganis brought us here on purpose. Maybe it's just to lure us here, Steve said. Uther frowned again, and Jaina's pretty face showed a hint of worry. Otherwise, why would Kel'Thuzad tell me about Mal'Ganis in Stratholme? Wouldn't it be better for them to hide and detonate Stratholme while we were unaware? 50,000 undead soldiers would sweep the entire eastern part of Lordaeron. Could it be that they are at odds? He told me and led me here, Steve continued. Jaina's face turned pale. You mean Mal'Ganis' target is actually you? Perhaps, Steve replied, unable to say more. He couldn't reveal everything from his perspective. It was impossible to explain that Mal'Ganis intended to corrupt him, as it was too unbelievable. End of this chapter. Chapter 368. Paladin Steve, swear to defend His Royal Highness the Prince. Swear to defend His Royal Highness the Prince. Swear to defend His Royal Highness the Prince. Hearing the voices of the attendants who followed closely behind, Steve waved his hand, and the voices stopped immediately. I don't think he wants my life. If he did, he could have done it in Andorhal. Why come all the way to Stratholme? Of course, we can't rule out the possibility entirely. Steve mused. Uther's mind raced. If Arthas died here, what would happen? First and foremost, the kingdom of Lordaeron would bear the brunt, possibly falling apart. Lordaeron was originally a kingdom composed of many lords. King Tyrrhenus had only one daughter, Princess Kalia, and one son, the prince standing before him. If the prince died, the lords, who would not accept the princess's succession, would certainly rebel. Those who swore loyalty to the Menethil royal family would inevitably clash with the lords, leading to a civil war. Lord Aeron would be dragged into chaos and might be powerless to stop the scourge. Secondly, Lord Aeron, Stormwind City, Ironforge, and Kul Tiras were among the remaining 7 human kingdoms. The kingdom of Alterac had betrayed the alliance and signed an agreement with the Horde. After the war, it was annexed by the powerful kingdom of Lordaeron and was considered destroyed. The kingdom of Stromgarde was severely weakened. Although it still existed in name, it had declined into a city-state. Gilneas had withdrawn from the alliance and established the Greymane Wall, isolating itself. There was already a significant gap in the human kingdoms. If civil strife erupted in the strongest kingdom, Lord Aeron, the alliance of human kingdoms would completely disintegrate. "Get out, leave this place to me," Steve smiled. "Escape? That's not something you entrusted to me, Mentor." After he finished speaking, he turned around, looked at the soldiers behind him, raised the hammer of justice, Menethil's power high in his hand, and shouted, "Warriors of Lordaeron, you now have 2 choices. First, turn around and escape from this impending hell on earth as far away as possible. Second, take up your weapons and kill your own compatriots." Uther gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with determination, but he remained silent, knowing that Arthas still had more to say. The Legion was in an uproar again. Asking them to take up arms and kill their compatriots? How could this be? There are more than 5,000 of our unarmed compatriots inside. We don't know how many are severely infected and how many are moderately infected. The news we have is that it is quite dangerous inside. "I know, as warriors of Lordaeron, asking you to slaughter your own compatriots is unthinkable," Steve continued. "I feel the same, but—" Steve's tone sharpened. "If we don't solve the crisis in Stratholme today, then tomorrow, the entire eastern kingdom of Lordaeron will fall into the hands of the undead. Do you have the heart to see your relatives and friends being killed by the undead who were once your compatriots?" The Legion was in an uproar again. "Your Highness, are you going to let us massacre the city? We should protect them, not—" A paladin's voice trembled, unable to accept this cruel reality, even though he understood the gravity of the situation. "No, I have thought of a way that might save some people," Steve said, turning his head to look at the leader of the stalker team. "Adams, I remember you can create highly potent poisons, right?" Adams suddenly trembled. "Your Highness, do you want me to poison the well water and let them drink it?" As expected of the alert stalker captain, he instantly understood the prince's intentions. However, the idea was too terrifying, and he couldn't bear it. Even if he escaped today, the assassination of his family members by the victims' families and righteous people would be inevitable in the future. "Don't worry," Steve reassured. "You are not alone. I will drip my blood into the poison," Steve said, patting Adams on the shoulder. "I am the one who gave the order. I just want to know how long it will take you to create a poison capable of killing 3 people. Uther's heart skipped a beat. Was his estimate of 3 survivors accurate, with thousands sacrificed? The purification of Stratholme had already been played out 10 times, and Steve knew very well that he couldn't save everyone. It would be a miracle if he could save even half of them. 20,000 was just an ideal number in his mind. With Mal'Ganis leading his subordinates to speed up the transformation of the undead, saving everyone was impossible, unless he could kill Mal'Ganis immediately, but that was out of the question. After 10 encounters with Mal'Ganis, Steve knew that Arthas alone did not have the power to kill the dreaded Demon King. He needed the help of Uther and Jaina to have any hope. The sooner they killed Mal'Ganis, the more people they could save. The best time to strike was when Mal'Ganis first appeared. If the 3 of them charged forward together, they could potentially defeat him. But Steve couldn't reveal what he knew from his godlike perspective. He couldn't predict that Mal'Ganis would taunt them upon entering the city. Although Duke had given him freedom, there were still some restrictions in this fantasy scenario. Once Mal'Ganis left, those restraints would disappear. Only then could he lead Uther and Jaina to kill Mal'Ganis. However, during the chase, they had to be wary of the undead transforming at any moment and the demons lurking in the shadows. If Jaina could be sent back to Dalaran from the very beginning to ask for help from the big boss, It would undoubtedly solve their troubles easily. But unfortunately, he couldn't say these words. It was forbidden. Seeming to understand something, Jaina stepped forward. "I will also drip my blood into it," she said. Knowing that something might happen to her beloved, she wouldn't leave like she had the previous 10 times. "What do you want to do?" Uther asked through gritted teeth. "I want to announce the matter and let them choose their own life and death. I believe in the brilliance of humanity. They will make the right choice," Steve said. "Your solution is to let them choose life and death?" Uther yelled. "So, what better solution do you have, Master?" Steve retorted, hating the feeling of not being able to reveal Mal'Gannis's plans. Only after the war started would they understand his good intentions. Uther was at a loss for words. "Or, Mentor, will you choose to leave with your own team and be a coward, a runaway?" Steve scolded, unwilling to back down. "I won't run away." "Then do you have a better rescue method?" Steve challenged. Uther gritted his teeth. "Have you ever thought about whether they will directly attack the army once it is announced?" End of this chapter. Chapter 369, Paladin Steve and 1. "As soldiers, this is their duty," Steve replied calmly. Uther was stunned. The consequence of attacking the army was death. "Mentor, you have more important tasks. Save your anger and direct it towards Mal'Gannis," Steve said. Mal'Gannis was at least at the hero level, and both he and Jaina were high level, but not enough to kill him. In other words, the only way to kill Mal'Gannis was to rely on Uther. Steve didn't know that the souls of demons were all bound to the twisting nether, and their strength in Azeroth was less than half. "Jaina, you have more important tasks," Steve turned his head and said to his beloved. It felt strange. He clearly knew that this was just an illusion, but he had a deep love for the person in front of him. He knew it was fake, but just like Peggy Carter, he could only say, "Duke was too amazing. The real person simulation was so good. Go to Lordaeron and inform the court priests and knights to do their best to create holy water for those mildly infected by the plague. Call as many saints as you can. This is my order," Steve said, taking off the identity symbol that represented Prince Menethil and handing it to Jaina. "I understand." Jaina nodded. "And Dalaran, let their healers make the most basic potions. The cost will be borne by Lordaeron. If possible, ask the Dalaran Council for help. Create as many as you can within 1 day and send them every hour. No matter what, you have to come back as quickly as possible, and we will enter the city when you return," Steve instructed. Teleporting horses was very laborious, and teleporting people was also taxing, but teleporting items did not consume a lot of magicians, even though there were many things to teleport and many times. "Well, you take care too. Also, tell those alchemists not to use fancy glass bottles. Put the potions in wooden barrels," Steve reminded her at the end. Jaina smiled happily, opened the portal, and left. The master mages in Dalaran were heavily influenced by the high elves and pursued beauty in everything. Even a bottle of low-level potion had to be meticulously carved with flowers. Sometimes these unnecessary embellishments were a complete waste. What he needed was medicine, not a beautifully decorated bottle. The influence of the high elves on the mages could be seen in the beauty of Dalaran. "Do you think the Council of Dalaran will help?" Uther asked. "How is it possible?" Steve shook his head. Entering the illusion of the scene, Steve knew some background. The second battle of the orcs had ended, and now it was the beginning of the third battle. Of course, strictly speaking, the third time could no longer be called the War of the Orcs. In the second battle, the Red Dragon Queen Alexstrasza was trapped by the orcs, and Crassus in the Council of Six was exposed as a red dragon. Afterwards, Crassus was busy saving the Red Dragon Queen and had been wandering outside the parliament. Now, although he had a name, he basically didn't care about it because he often disappeared for a while. Also in the second war, a large area of the High Elves fell, and the remaining High Elves were suppressed in the main city of Quel'Thalas. Kel'Thas of the Council of Six also pulled out to rescue, and now the High Elves were still recovering. In addition, Kel'Thas was his rival in love, so it was no wonder he wouldn't come to help him. Kel'Thuzad, a member of the original 6-member council, had already been slaughtered by him. Speaker Antonidas was old and had disagreements with Lordaeron. Most of the time, he didn't care about the outside world, and only protected Dalaran. In addition, his disciple was slaughtered by him, although there was a reason for it, but obviously the old guy would not let it go. Modera also had another character who was basically a bystander. During the Second Battle of the Orcs, Dalaran also suffered terribly. In view of Jaina's face as an Antonidas disciple, those pharmacists might help. With eyes set high, they could at least make some potions, which was already quite an achievement. It was unrealistic to expect them to send heroic magicians here. And how many heroes are there, anyway? They still needed to be kept in Lordaeron. About half an hour later, Jaina returned in a hurry. She had teleported all the way, and her magic power was nearly depleted, thanks to the teacher who had given her a lot of potions. Seeing her come back alone, Steve knew that Dalaran had turned him down. Sure enough, Jaina shook her head. Time is running out. I could only reach my mentor, but he refused. Yes, he just persuaded some pharmacists to help us make potions. I don't know how much they can produce, but Lordaeron's chief court master has mobilized all the power he could find. I hope it's in time. Steve sighed, looking up at the sky. As expected, he had to rely on himself. Adams returned, sweating profusely. Your Highness, it has succeeded, he exclaimed, holding a large bottle, about 2 liters in size. The dark green liquid inside gave off an ominous aura. That's all? Your Highness, this is a high-concentration poison. After throwing it into the well water, it can maintain its toxicity for half a day. After that, the toxicity will dilute to a very low level. It will still cause diarrhea if consumed within 3 days, but that's all, Adams explained quickly, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Here you go, Steve said. Half a day was enough. He took out a knife and made a cut on the palm of his hand, pouring blood into the medicine bottle. Then, he used the holy light to heal the wound. Jaina did the same. Uther hesitated for a moment but followed suit. Steve nodded at his mentor, who still supported him. Go, Adams. When the army enters, take the opportunity to throw the poison into the well. Be careful, Steve ordered. Yes, Your Highness, Adams nodded, then sneaked away and disappeared, with his team following to protect him. You all stay here to protect the mages and receive supplies, Steve instructed. Then he suddenly turned around, held up the hammer of justice, Menethil's house, and shouted, Warriors of Lordaeron, follow me for the sake of our compatriots and the countless civilians behind us. Set off! For Lord Aaron! For Milshire! For Your Highness! The soldiers shouted fervently. Forward! Steve took the lead, riding forward on his mount. Jaina also left the 100-member mage team outside, dividing them into 2 groups, one to receive the materials sent by Lordaeron and the other to receive those from Dalaran. End of this chapter. Chapter 370, Paladin Steve, N2. The prince arrived, and the citizens of Stratholme rushed forward excitedly, exclaiming, Praise the holy light, it is Prince Arthas. Many people in the city are suffering from serious diseases. Can you help us? Steve shook his head and said, I can only let you die without pain. In reality, Peggy Carter was stunned. How could this happen? Wasn't Steve supposed to be in control? How could it be exactly the same as the previous plot? The citizens of Stratholme were shocked. What? This is impossible. Oh, no. Steve suddenly activated his skill. Instead of smashing with a hammer, he raised his hand, and a small golden hammer fell from the sky, striking the citizen's head accurately. Hammer of Sanctions! The innocent citizen was instantly stunned for 6 seconds. The citizens in the distance were dumbfounded. What? What happened? Exorcism! After the Hammer of Sanctions ended, Steve released a strong holy light. The bright holy light rushed into the body of the innocent citizen, instantly destroying them. The disguise fell away, revealing a ferocious demon. The demon screamed as it was destroyed. Templar's judgment! Steve raised the giant hammer high, and the hammer, shining with holy light, struck the demon's head heavily. Black blood sprayed all over the ground, and the demon fell slowly, unwillingly. Before entering the city, Steve had already applied the demon detection potion. This wasn't something you could just click and drink in the game. You had to take a part of it and smear it on your eyes to see the demons hidden in the crowd. Unfortunately for this demon, it was unlucky enough to reveal itself. The rest of the citizens suddenly went into an uproar. At first, they thought the prince had lost his mind and was killing innocent people indiscriminately. But now it seemed there were demons in the city. The plague was too strange, spreading so fast it had to be caused by demons. Steve yelled, "Mal'Ganis, I'm here, get out! This is just the beginning, I'll kill you." Although he felt something was wrong, Mal'Ganis still showed up, a ferocious smile on his face. "Yes, this is just the beginning. I have been waiting for you, young prince. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Mal'Ganis." The citizens of Stratholme were dumbfounded again. What was that terrifying purple figure 3 meters away? A devil, an absolute devil. Huge dark purple bat wings, a skull-like face, 2 backward curving devil horns on his forehead, huge devil claws, and the recurved joints of the legs. Was this the devil hiding in the city? For some reason, the surrounding citizens felt a chill in their hearts. "As you can see, your people now belong to me. I will turn these citizens into undead from house to house and let the fire of life in Stratholme be extinguished forever." Steve glared at the demon in front of him. "This time, you won't escape. I won't let you succeed, Mal'Ganis. This time, you must die." "Very well, then let's see who is faster, you or me." Mal'Ganis laughed coldly and then disappeared with a shua. With Mal'Ganis gone, Steve felt that at this moment, all the restrictions were lifted. "That's Dreadlord Mal'Ganis?" Uther's eyes widened. A vicious demon, Jaina gripped her staff tightly. The townspeople were terrified and began to panic. "Your Highness, what is going on here? What is that? Is it a demon? Oh my God, are we going to die? Those plagues were spread by demons, right, Your Highness? I already knew it was not easy. Damn, why is this happening? Your Highness, save us. We don't want to die. Woohoo!" Facing the turbulent crowd of citizens, the personal guards became highly vigilant. God knows if there were any undead about to transform. Immediately, a row of personal guards stepped forward, brandishing long swords and spears, and shouted loudly, "Everyone stop!" They had received strict orders. Any citizen who dared to attack would be killed. These personal guards were the true knights, 100% loyal to the royal family of Menethil. Even if ordered to kill innocent babies, they would do so without hesitation. They might feel discomfort afterward, but they would not commit suicide out of guilt, for their lives no longer belonged to them once they took the oath. Even in death, they would follow the orders of their liege. Facing these chilling knights, the citizens paused, some squatting on the ground in fright. The knights' strong and palpable killing aura left no doubt that if anyone took a step forward, they would strike without mercy. "How could this be?" someone muttered. Steve patted his aide's shoulder, who nodded and stepped aside, though his arms remained defensively positioned. "Jaina, give me a speaker spell so the whole of Stratholme can hear," Steve said with a smile. "All right," Jaina replied. As expected of the disciple of the leader of Dalaran, her magic was quite superb. Steve tested the spell and then announced, "I am Arthas Menethil, the Prince of Lordaeron. As you can see, this plague is a conspiracy of the devil." "I am terribly sorry," he continued. "I am your prince. I was supposed to protect you, but the devil hiding in the shadows is too cunning. By the time we discovered the contamination, it was too late. The batch of food was already poisoned with the plague." A hush fell over Stratholme. Whatever people were doing, they stopped. Even Mal'Ganis, who was speeding up the transformation of the undead, was suddenly stunned. For some reason, he felt there was a flaw in the plan. This prince seemed not as inexperienced as he had imagined. In fact, he seemed even more dangerous. "I am very sad to tell you that those who have eaten the food are infected by the plague, and you will soon become undead. As dead creatures, like demons, you will rise again after death. But at that time, you will no longer be conscious and will only attack the living. Your husbands, wives, fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters, your relatives, will all be killed by you." Chaos erupted in Stratholme. More and more citizens began to flock to the city gates, making the guards feel like they were facing a formidable enemy. "Someone suggested to me that I should kill all of you for the sake of the greater good of Lordaeron, because in one day, the whole of Stratholme could become undead, leading to more of our compatriots dying." The citizens, who had been moving, stopped in their tracks, dumbfounded and panicked. No one wanted to die, and no one wanted to be killed. But I rejected their suggestion. I am the Prince of Lordaeron, and I should protect you. I must be worthy of the surname Menethil. End of this chapter. Chapter 371, Paladin Steve 3. Hearing the prince's words, the hesitant and frightened citizens breathed a sigh of relief, but the cruelty was yet to come. Adams quietly appeared beside Steve and nodded. "But I'm sorry," Adams began. "Today is destined to be a dark day for Stratholme, this holy city, and today it is also doomed that a considerable number of people will die." The crowd trembled again. "I'm sorry." Steve shook his head. "After my elite assassin team lost more than half of their lives, they divided the plague-infected into 3 groups: mild, moderate, and severe. A few days ago, the black-clothed corpses that inexplicably appeared beside the city wall or in dark corners were intelligence assassins of His Highness the Prince. I can only tell you with regret that the heavily infected, even if Archbishop Alonce's fall were resurrected, there would probably be nothing he could do." Steve continued, shaking his head. The crowd convulsed again. "Archbishop Alonce's fall. You may have no feelings for the missionaries, and you may not remember the names of all the saints, but you will definitely know the name Alonce's Faol. In Dalaran, a long time ago, a missionary of Lordaeron threw a copper coin into the fountain pool and made a wish. I hope that one day I can spread the way of the holy light to the common people and teach them the meaning of the 3 virtues." This missionary was Alonce's Faol, later the Archbishop of Stratholme Cathedral in the Kingdom of Lordaeron, a friend of Anduin Lothar, the founder of the Paladin profession, and the Knights of the Silver Hand. After the victory in the war against the Horde, Alonce's Faol raised a large amount of funds to build the Cathedral of Light in the newly rebuilt Stormwind City. In order to commemorate his dedication to the Church of Holy Light and his contribution to the reconstruction of the Stormwind Kingdom, a statue of Alonce's Faol was erected in front of the Cathedral of Light. This person, who dedicated his life to the Holy Light, has spread the spirit of the Paladin to every part of Azeroth and will pass it on forever. He fulfilled the wish on the original coin and is a well-deserved saint. Not to mention, the people living here in Stratholme have long regarded Alonce's Faol as their spiritual leader. If the old man were still here, today's demons wreaking havoc with the plague would never have happened. It's just that Steve doesn't know that if the plot goes according to the development, within a year or 2, Alonce's Faol will be resurrected. During the Scourge invasion, the plague infected the lands of Lordaeron. From the tomb of Alonce's Faol, a mindless zombie was born. This was just an accident at first. Even the generals of the Scourge did not realize that there was such a person among their ranks. However, over time, Faol's own will recovered, and he hid and looked around for the survivors of Lordaeron. Calia Menethil, the last living royal of Lordaeron, was found and secured by Faol. This is the time for the second fool to resurrect the Scourge after the Lich King. "I can only save those who are mildly infected," Steve shook his head. "This time there are only 500 mid-level paladins and priests, each of whom is guaranteed to fight against the undead. Under this premise, only 5 mildly infected people can be cured, so there are only 2,500 people." The entire Stratholme was shocked. "But don't worry, I have notified Wang Cheng and Dalaran to speed up the production of holy water and potions. But we only have 1 day. How much we can save in 1 day can only depend on the will of the holy light." The citizens who gradually crowded towards the gate of the city were completely panicked. Your Highness, are you going to abandon us?" 2,500 people. "God, how could this happen? I want to live, I don't want to die. Woo-woo." "Your Highness, help me. We don't want to die." Sure enough, some people, the army began to attack. Did they think the law would not hold them accountable? The personal guards took a sudden step forward, thrusting their spears. With a swift motion, they fell to the ground in front of the formation. They never imagined that His Royal Highness would actually kill them. "Again, those who dare to approach will be killed without mercy," the attendant shouted, raising his long sword. He had to say this because the prince couldn't. The responsibility had to fall on him. Steve stepped out from the crowd. "I don't need to explain to you the current crisis facing the kingdom and the entire continent. I can only say that this time, only our group has come to support. Today, No one can leave Stratholme. I will not allow any infected person who might become undead to leave and endanger our compatriots outside. Steve took a deep breath. You may think I'm cruel, and you may hate me, but I have no choice. I will do my best to treat you, but I am also prepared for mass casualties. And here, in this city, there is a dreadlord named Mal'Ganis. He and his team of demons are accelerating the transformation of infected people into undead. Even as I explain this to you, deep within the city, some of your relatives and friends have already become undead and are slaughtering humans. But I have to explain it to you here. Truly, there is not much time left for me to solve this plague. After finishing, Steve took a sharp breath and roared loudly. While I explain the current crisis to you, I also have to race against time with Mal'Ganis. My side is saving people, and his side is killing them. My healing is slow, and their transformation is fast. The transformed undead will kill innocent citizens. Among them could be your relatives and friends. And every additional undead adds pressure to my team, causing more soldiers to die. Yes, they can die, because that is their destiny as soldiers. Since they became your protectors, they have the responsibility to protect you and kill the enemy. This is their mission and their glory. Today, soldiers are destined to die, but their death is worthwhile. They are heroes. And now, every citizen of Stratholme present, you will also be heroes. Yes, you can be heroes, or you can choose to be cowards. The whole city has been poisoned, deadly poison. Go. If you don't want your highly infected relatives to become dirty and ugly undead, fetch a bowl of well water and give it to them to drink. It will hurt, but within a minute, the pain will be gone. Of course, you can also choose not to do it. Our soldiers came today to kill the undead. This is their responsibility. As for the moderately infected, whether they drink it or not, it's up to you. End of this chapter. Chapter 372. Don't leave a comrade behind. Don't leave an enemy alive. All lightly infected individuals should be separated from those moderately infected. As for the severely infected, forget it. Steve shook his head. The severely infected couldn't move at all. They were bedridden and extremely weak. People with mild infections have fever, chills, and sweat profusely, he continued. Moderately infected individuals have dark eye sockets and heavy eye shadows as if they haven't slept for days. They may also experience convulsions and dehydration. These symptoms were analyzed by Adams and his team. Fortunately, the difference between mild and moderate infections was obvious, the presence of dark eye sockets. As for the severely infected, they couldn't even leave their beds to appear before him. I've explained everything you need to know. How you choose to proceed is up to you, Steve announced. Final notice, all citizens of Stratholme, please gather at the city gate. If you can't make it, form groups of 100 and keep your distance from each other. This will help avoid sneak attacks and transformations by Mal'Ganis's demon team to the greatest extent. Then, this is the end of the call. When I make another announcement, it will be time to kill Mal'Ganis. With that, Steve glanced at Jaina, who nodded and cut off the amplification spell. What are you planning, Arthas? Uther hurriedly stepped forward and asked, Do you think the soldiers can handle it if you gather everyone at the city gate? Yeah, it's too risky, Jaina added, worried. Steve shook his head. There's no other way. Only by gathering all the citizens can we make Mal'Ganis lose his targets. Uther instantly understood. You want to force Mal'Ganis to rush towards the city gate so you can catch and kill him? No, I want to clear the city to find Mal'Ganis and kill him as soon as possible. Only then can we stop his constant transformations and reduce the number of undead, Steve explained. This is a dangerous move, Uther sighed. This is a dangerous place. Playing dangerous games in a dangerous situation complements each other. Steve smiled, then looked at Uther seriously. Teacher, the important task of killing Mal'Ganis will be handed over to you. I'm afraid I can't match him. Uther tightened his grip on the hammer of justice. Don't worry, Jaina. Yes? I need you to find Mal'Ganis' exact location and then inform me. Be careful. I understand, Jaina nodded, ready to leave. Wait. What else? It's strange that Mal'Ganis disappeared just now. Look around. There might be a hidden demon magic circle or teleportation circle nearby. That's how Kel'Thuzad escaped back then. I suspect Mal'Ganis has a similar way. Find it and destroy it, Steve instructed. Don't worry, leave it to me. Be careful. Got it. Jaina nodded and turned to leave. More and more people gathered at the city gate, but the number was limited, maybe barely 1,000. This was within Steve's calculations. Many must have been transformed into undead within the city, blocking the way, making it impossible for too many to gather here. Moreover, the citizens had never seen real undead, so they doubted his words. By the time they saw the truth, it would be too late. But no matter what, the 1,000 people gathered here, as long as they followed orders and divided into groups of 100, keeping their distance, they would survive if they didn't act rashly. However, it was impossible not to act. The citizens only had ordinary farming tools, hatchets, and kitchen knives, which were nothing compared to well-armed and experienced soldiers. Moreover, with shield soldiers in front and pikemen following closely behind, even if the phalanx entered the water, they could hold their ground. Stratholme was a fortress with only one main gate, making escape nearly impossible. The back door led to the Baron's territory and had been sealed for years, only accessible with a key that was currently with the Baron at a banquet in Lordaeron. The mayor might have a spare key, but Steve had already taken precautions by having soldiers block the back door with boulders. "Do you understand your mission?" Steve asked his attendant. The attendant immediately pounded his chest and shouted, "Understood, Your Highness. I will not let anyone escape, nor will I allow any transformed undead to pass." "Very good. The warriors will lead and the paladins will follow. I'll leave the hard work to you," Steve said, patting the attendant heavily on the shoulder. The attendant trembled slightly but saluted crisply. He knew that hard work meant killing. If anyone dared to act out, his sword would teach them a lesson. The aide-de-camp had to take on this task because the paladins were too occupied treating those infected by the plague. Moreover, it was not ideal for paladins to massacre innocent citizens. If they encountered transformed beings, they would fight without hesitation, but killing fellow humans could shake their faith in the holy light. Steve turned to the army and shouted, "All troops obey orders." "For Lordaeron," the soldiers echoed. Steve continued, "Your tasks are serious and the burden on your shoulders is heavy. You are responsible for the safety of millions of compatriots, and the entire Lordaeron rests on you. Unfortunately, I can't share this burden with you, but it won't stop us from venting our anger. The soldiers will be divided into 2 groups. Some of you will stay here to guard against demon attacks. Mal'Ganis might come, but it's unlikely. I, along with a team of elites, will march into Stratholme and take Mal'Ganis's head as our trophy. It's all for the Alliance." "What is an alliance?" he asked rhetorically. "The strongest friendship of all those who desire to live. Soldiers, take care of yourselves. Don't leave a comrade behind, and don't leave an enemy standing." His words were powerful and resonant. Uther, watching, felt a surge of pride. If it weren't such a serious occasion, he might have shed a tear. In Arthas, he saw the glory of a true leader. The soldiers' fighting spirit was ignited, and they raised their weapons, howling to the sky. For the Alliance. For Lordaeron. For the royal family of Menethil. Steve turned to Uther. "Mentor, bring 100 high-level paladins and another 100 high-level fighters. Follow me into Stratholme." Uther nodded and looked at his adjutant. "This is for you. Can you complete the task?" The adjutant saluted sharply. "Yes, sir." End of this chapter. Chapter 373. The Good and Evil of Human Nature. After completing the final deployment, Steve and Uther rushed in with their 2 teams of men. The citizens at the city gate watched the prince leave, but the attendant and the adjutant were on high alert. They had to be vigilant against possible collisions and be wary of the undead who could transform at any moment. Additionally, they had to release a small opening to let the mildly infected in, handing them over to the paladins behind for healing. When His Royal Highness was present, there was no pressure, but now that he was gone, the weight of responsibility felt like a mountain. Steve and the others had entered the depths of Stratholme. Sure enough, many people have already transformed into undead and are wreaking havoc. Uther gritted his teeth, directing the team to charge forward. For these low-level undead, high-level paladins could handle them with ease. Of course, there were differences in strength even among high-level paladins. These 200 men were mostly high-level, but the stronger the individual, the harder it was to be promoted. Steve was a high-level senior. When facing Mal'Ganis, he was still being toyed with. If he hadn't been trying to induce Mal'Ganis to degenerate, he could have killed him easily. The latter group of paladins were no match for Mal'Ganis. Only Uther could stand against him. If Jaina destroyed the demon formation, the three of them might be able to take him down together. Right? As they fought their way through, all they heard were cries, wails, and curses, mixed with the good and evil of human nature. Hearing the scolding and quarreling from the surrounding houses, the soldiers felt a heavy burden. A young man, about 20 years old, drank a bowl of well water and returned home trembling. Soon, hearty laughter came from an old man inside. "Bastard, you brat! Ha ha! Cough, cough! Cough, cough, cough! Grandpa, I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I'm sorry!" The young man knelt down on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he held the poison. His grandfather was severely infected and unable to move anymore. He had to feed his grandfather the poison himself. The torment of killing his own relative made him miserable. "Bastard, why are you crying? Your father will definitely kick you to death when he comes back. Your grandfather and I were the ones who built Stratholme back then. This is my home, our family for life. Your grandfather, I used to be a militia captain, and I protected Rumape village all my life." The old man gasped for breath, continuing to speak despite his weakness. "My whole life has been one of glory. I don't want to die and become one of those dirty undead. Do you want me to kill myself to protect myself? Is it a compatriot for a lifetime?" Stratholme had been built for hundreds of years, certainly not by him alone. When he was a child, a group of Leumans stormed the holy city and destroyed a section of the city wall. At that time, he was less than 10 years old and followed his grandfather to move stones. Although he only moved a few pieces, it could be considered construction. "Bring me the bowl." Suddenly, the old man sat up abruptly, stretching out his hand and shouting with a flash of determination, "Grandpa, you!" The young man was stunned. "Give it to me!" The old man opened his eyes wide, grabbed the bowl with his hands, and drank it down. The young man burst into tears again. He wasn't stupid. He knew that his grandfather didn't want him to bear the guilt of killing his ancestor for the rest of his life, so he drank the poison himself. The bowl was thrown to the ground. "Ha ha ha! It's really good water. Good water! I haven't seen His Highness in my life, old man, so I really want to meet him. The water bestowed by His Highness is sweet. Ha ha ha!" The old man looked up and laughed. The paladins outside suddenly saw His Highness change direction and were surprised. "Your Highness?" they exclaimed. Steve pushed the door open. "Old man, I'm here." The sound of coughing stopped abruptly, and there was already blood at the corner of the old man's mouth. Seeing the imposing man striding in, covered in black blood, the old man's eyes widened, tears glistening in them. "Finally, I have seen death. Death is not worthless. This life." The coughs became louder, and more blood spurted out. With his last strength, the old man patted his grandson on the shoulder. "Boy, don't cry. In the future, kill a demon and take his head as a sacrifice to me. Don't hate His Highness. He has done well. It's my choice. Wow." A mouthful of blood was sprayed out, and the old man's body gradually weakened and fell to the ground, his eyes becoming unfocused. "It's a pity. The only regret is, I can't watch you start a family and a business, marry a wife and have children." After speaking, the old man closed his eyes forever. "Grandfather!" Steve took a deep breath, walked over, and patted the young man's shoulder heavily. "You may hate me in the future. You may hate me. This is my order, after all. I am not afraid that you will hate me, but you must remember who your real enemy is. Leave. Go to the city gate, where someone will heal you. You can't stay here. Come back and bury your grandfather after it's over." After speaking, he looked at one of his subordinates. "Take him back." The paladin suddenly refused. "Your Highness, I." He still wanted to fight alongside His Highness. "Listen to the order." "Yes." The young man stood up slowly and wiped the tears from his face. "No need. Your Highness, go ahead. Don't be distracted by me, and don't let that damned Mal'Ganis escape. I can do it alone." With that, he picked up a sickle and rushed out. Steve sighed, took one last look at the old man, and strode out. "Let's move on. There is a good side, and there is also an evil side." "Bastard!" You fed me poisonous water, and I'll kill you. Ah! I don't want to die. I will definitely survive. I am a detox-infected person. You die. If you die, there will be one more place to live. I can live on. Ah! Steve gripped the hammer tightly, wishing he could kill that bastard. The evil in the world is nothing more than brother-in-law killing. Uther quickly pressed it down. Now is not the time to pay attention to them. Take note of this room number. We still have to go after Mal'Ganis. Yes, I lost my composure, Mentor. Let's go. A group of people rushed to the deepest part of Stratholme, but still did not find any trace of Mal'Ganis, only killing a few teams of his demon soldiers. Did he run away? Impossible. The demon detection potion can't lose its effect. If he can't see it, can't the teacher see it too? All the paladins had applied the demon detection potion before setting off, so they couldn't all fail, right? At this moment, an ice cone suddenly rose in the sky with a bew and then exploded with a bang. It's Jaina! There! Steve turned around and rushed towards the signal position, followed by the paladins behind him. End of this chapter. Chapter 74, The Battle of Stratholme. Gianna. Steve rushed forward, brandishing the hammer of justice, and struck Mal'Ganis with a powerful blow. The holy light, like a battering ram, hit Mal'Ganis squarely on the back, sending him flying. His wings were shattered by the force of the impact. Damn it! Mal'Ganis cursed. Jaina, are you all right? Steve hurried to her side, helping her up with concern etched on his face. In the real world, Peggy Carter watched this scene unfold, her brows furrowing. Despite being over 100 years old, and knowing this was all a fabricated illusion, she couldn't help but feel a pang of discomfort. Diana, observing alongside her, stifled a laugh, imagining the domestic trouble Steve might face once he returned. Diana was also deeply impressed by Duke's powerful abilities. This was the legendary creation with a mere gesture, right? In less than a week, he had crafted a nearly 100% authentic scenario illusion based on the character's thoughts, feelings, and strength comparisons. Even though it wasn't the creation of an actual world, it was still incredibly impressive. The characters within the illusion had their own emotions and thoughts, making the experience feel real. Even a low-level commoner like Stratholme had his own personality, not just a cold, disposable NPC. Duke smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, he doesn't have feelings for Jaina. It's all part of the dream. He's channeling Arthas's emotions right now, which is why he's so concerned about Jaina's safety. Peggy Carter, though slightly embarrassed, asked, Then, after he leaves the illusion, will he still think about Jaina? Will he remember someone from the illusion? Duke, understanding her concern, replied, If it were an ordinary person, they might lose themselves in the virtual and reality. But Steve won't. You have to trust him. Peggy remained silent, still worried. Don't worry, Duke continued. He will stay in the illusion for a while longer as Steve. Why? Peggy asked, confused. According to the current situation, it's only a matter of time before he receives the inheritance. But receiving the inheritance isn't the end. He needs to master his newly acquired abilities. He will use a new and original identity to master his powers and learn how to be a good captain. At that time, he will let go of his feelings for Jaina, Duke explained. Is that so? Peggy murmured. Jaina, how are you? Steve asked. I'm fine, but my magic power is a bit overdrawn, Jaina replied, shaking her head. I'm afraid I won't be able to support you in the next battle. She then lowered her voice. In a cave outside of Stratholme, there is indeed a teleportation array, which I have destroyed. Although I sensed quite evil demonic energy from it, I'm not sure if it's his. You have to be careful. When she sent out the signal earlier, Mal'Ganis discovered her, and they had to fight fiercely. But she realized that Mal'Ganis might have a conspiracy against Arthas. He could have easily killed her but chose not to, merely toying with her. The demon likely knew about her relationship with Steve but didn't want her dead, at least not before Arthas arrived. Perhaps he intended to kill her in front of Arthas? He didn't expect Arthas to go berserk and blow him away. From this, it seemed Mal'Ganis didn't want Arthas dead. What exactly did he want? Leave it to us. Everyone, take Miss Proudmoore and get out of here, Steve ordered. Your Highness, we will fight side by side with you, one of the paladins protested. Obey, Steve commanded, turning his head and staring them down. Yes. The paladins had no choice but to surround Jaina and gradually retreat from the battlefield. Mentor, let us master and apprentice. Fight side by side again, Steve declared, gripping the hammer of justice tightly. The bond between them was not just that of mentor and student. They had fought together for justice across the mainland, earning a legendary reputation. Today, they would join forces once more. I've been waiting for this, for a long time, Uther replied, his grip on his hammer firm. Let's do this, mentor. Steve charged towards Mal'Ganis, channeling the full power of the hammer of justice Menethil. The hammer radiated a brilliant white gold light, the kind of light that demons despise the most. Boom! The golden energy clashed violently with the dark purple demonic energy, creating a thunderous explosion. Mal'Ganis, I told you, today is the day you die, Steve shouted. Mal'Ganis laughed maniacally, using the chaotic energy to distance himself from Steve. Ahahaha, young prince, you did well this time. But this isn't over. The next time we meet, you will face a new reality. Trying to escape, mentor, Steve called out. Uther surged forward with sudden speed. Mal'Ganis's expression changed drastically. What? Why can't I leave? Damn it, you. Boom! Uther's hammer, glowing with an even brighter holy light, struck Mal'Ganis square in the face, sending him flying. Damn, what did you do? Mal'Ganis roared, summoning a chaotic wave of magic energy that brought forth a swarm of dark creatures and insects. Holy light shield. Uther and Steve protected themselves with the holy light, pushing through the dark swarm towards Mal'Ganis. They knew they had to take advantage of his weakened state. Boom, boom, boom. The bright platinum holy lights clashed repeatedly with the dark energy, each collision echoing like thunder. Dozens of rounds passed in a relentless exchange of power. With a final, anguished roar, the battle concluded. I will return. Damn it, the day I come back will be your death day. Mal'Ganis screamed as Uther's hammer struck his head. The holy light surged into the Demon King's body, tearing through him. Mal'Ganis's body began to crack and crumble. Finally, he was defeated. Both Steve and Uther were breathing heavily. The battle had been grueling. At that moment, Steve felt a warmth spread through his body as streams of pure platinum holy light poured into him. He had finally obtained the Paladin inheritance. End of this chapter. Chapter 375, Pulling the Ears. Oh yeah! Peggy Carter suddenly shouted excitedly, startling everyone who was resting, watching TV, or drinking coffee. What happened? Is it done? Steve is glowing? Is he about to ascend to heaven? Shut up! Indeed, Steve had completed the inheritance, and the illusion of the scene had disappeared. His entire body now shone like a super bright light bulb, radiating golden light. Whether it's serious or not, I don't know for the time being, but I do know one thing. We won't need to light up the lights at night, Bucky joked. Duke suddenly remembered Kobayashi from Dragon Ball, whose bald head could also shine. He's a good target at night, Tony quipped. It increases our risk of exposure, Thor added. Suddenly, a chain-like golden light burst out from Steve's body, lifting him into the air. Everyone's mouths dropped open. Visually, it was very Super Saiyan. The only regret was that Steve's hair didn't grow out, stick up on end, or turn completely blonde. A minor flaw. It took a long time for the golden light to subside before Steve descended and slowly opened his eyes. Blessing of power. A golden circle-shaped rune of light rose from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. I feel like I could kill a cow, Bucky said, his eyes flashing with enthusiasm. You could have killed a cow, Tony replied. I mean with the other hand. Blessing of the king. It seems to be a lot stronger in an instant. Blessing of wisdom. I feel like my IQ can surpass Stark's, Bucky said. You say that to prove that you don't have IQ, Tony retorted, rolling his eyes. Look at the top of the master's head. Everyone has grown up. Why can you surpass the wisdom of the master? Just kidding. As they bantered, only Thor frowned, staring at Steve without blinking. In Steve, Thor felt a powerful familiarity with his father. That unique divine golden radiance was something only his father could use. Of course, Steve was nowhere near his father's strength, but he had just stepped into the legend. I feel that I have become a lot stronger, Steve said happily, looking at his golden fist. In the illusion, he didn't have an intuitive feeling, but he knew that the paladin was very powerful. However, that was Alsace's power. Not all paladins were that powerful. After coming out and returning to his body, he finally felt it. That's right, you didn't let me down. Take a good rest and do the follow-up work well. Tomorrow, you still have to enter the illusion to continue your skill proficiency. When you can manipulate freely, then you can leave, Duke said. Ah, do I still have to go in? Is it also a spiritual body? Steve asked. He had already obtained the inheritance of the paladin, but that didn't mean he could use it freely. After going through 11 scene simulations, he understood that it was a good place to quickly master skills. Rouen and the others nodded. Their X-Men Academy also had a simulation training room, but it relied on advanced technological simulation methods to create sensory signals for training. You might fail and be decapitated in it, but it was just intense pain, not death. If ordinary people trained in it, they might really die, but mutants had experienced so much that their will far surpassed that of ordinary people, so they wouldn't really die in the simulation. But it would definitely hurt for a moment. However, although their technology was strong, it could only simulate a single battle scene. Corazon was even better. Such a complicated scene plot was simply not something the X-Men Academy could do. It was unbelievable how strong Duke's control over magic was. Could he one day create a world, throw them in it without them knowing it, and they wouldn't even realize it? Of course I'm going in, Steve affirmed. Is it still the illusion of this scene? Steve asked. No, it's the next plot story, and it's no longer a spiritual body. You will enter with a stronger sense of reality. But you have to be careful, because if you enter like this, you can get injured, Duke explained. Huh? Peggy Carter covered her mouth in shock. If you get cut with a sharp blade, you will leave a scar, and the scar will still exist after you leave. It's just that you won't die. I call it 100% real-world simulation. Do you dare? Duke asked. Steve nodded without hesitation. Of course. Why wouldn't I? The degree of danger in the real world is much higher than in an illusion. At least there are no guns in it. Of course, he didn't know that there were also guns inside. Although they were primitive gunpowder guns, they were even more powerful. Very good. Duke patted Steve on the shoulder. The next plot will follow the story of Stratholme. This time, the prince has not fallen and will embark on a new path. Of course, the unknown will always be constantly changing, and no one can say whether he will continue to degenerate. Your identity will be a high-level paladin who is a bodyguard next to Arthas, and the plot will start from here. Then Steve asked a rather foolish question. Then, will Arthas still remember me? Are you an idiot? Duke retorted. Oh. Steve scratched his head in embarrassment. Of course not. The new plot will be that Arthas saved Stratholme alone, and he has become less experienced but a qualified leader. The induction in Arthas's mind has disappeared. Okay, I'll give you a day to rest and arrange your work, Duke said. No problem, Steve replied. In the illusion of the scene, Steve was very tired, mentally and physically. He really needed to take a nap for an hour, but as soon as he got back to his house, his ears were grabbed by Peggy Carter. Okay, you are so concerned about that Jaina Proudmoore, right? Do you really think that you are Arthas? Peggy demanded. Hey, Peggy, be merciful, Steve pleaded with a bitter look on his face. He then remembered that Peggy Carter had been watching from outside. She must have noticed everything. Listen to my explanation. That wasn't under my control at all. Duke is too powerful, and he completely substituted Arthas's emotions. I couldn't help it. Some things are beyond my control. You wronged me, Steve explained. Do you think I'm a young girl? Stop lying to me. You can change even Arthas, but emotion can't be changed? Peggy retorted. You really wronged me, Steve insisted. Still? Peggy twisted his ear harder. Ah! Steve screamed, turning around 180 degrees at the same time, his ears hurting. End of this chapter. Chapter 376. Doctor Strange succeeds in apprenticeship. As the crowd gradually dispersed, the sense of a new profession being born lingered in the air. Diana, curious and somewhat impressed, asked, I really underestimated you. How long did it take you to create that illusion scene? Probably less than a day, Duke replied. The process is actually quite simple, mainly because of the uneven comparison of strengths. It takes a lot of effort to construct the true emotions of the characters. To keep Steve from going astray, he must feel the most sincere emotional outburst. If it was fake, why go through all this trouble? He could pass on the paladin to anyone, even Black Widow, but a paladin needs a rigorous heart. This is his little attachment to this profession. So the rest is the follow-up plot? Diana asked. Yes, Duke confirmed. Diana sighed. She felt she was getting farther and farther away from Duke. Originally, both of them had half-god powers, but now the difference seemed vast. Not to mention the X-Men, even if she were placed in the illusion, she might not be able to perceive the virtual from the real. What's wrong? Duke asked. It's nothing, Diana shook her head. In the new plot, what does Alsace look like? She was very interested in this tragic character, perhaps because she felt a connection. Although their natures were different, Diana's life experience also had a touch of tragedy. Actually, to obtain the inheritance of the paladin, Steve doesn't necessarily need to save the citizens of Stratholme. He only needs to have no corruption in his heart. Of course, saving innocent citizens is the fastest and easiest way to get the inheritance, Duke explained. I arranged 3 possibilities for him to obtain it, which also correspond to 3 futures of Alsace. You have seen one of them, the most positive one. The other 2 involve degeneration along the same path, and although he did not fall, he was also devastated because of too many deaths. The original route is the easiest, just weaving according to the plot of World of Warcraft. Duke doesn't need to completely follow the power level of World of Warcraft. He only needs to use the strength of a character as a reference, such as Alsace. As for the other 2 lines, it's more difficult. But Duke doesn't need to create the entire Eastern Kingdom, just a few scene battles and some running roads to connect the plot together. Because there is no reference for these 2, there is no specific main line, and changes are infinitely possible. The specific way to go depends on Alsace's approach. However, Duke has formulated 3 sets of plans for each decision made by Alsace: upper, middle, and lower third-class strategies. This can evolve into up to 9 possible endings. But Steve doesn't need to go to the end, he just needs to be skilled. The rest can be used as simulation training to train his disciples. Meanwhile, in Kathmandu, "This is my master's temple, called Ancient One," Modu introduced. "Is it Guyi, the real name?" "Okay, forget what you think you know, sorry." Stephen Strange quickly apologized, then walked into the door and immediately saw an old man reading a book. He thought the old man was Guyi, as Modu didn't specify the gender. Thank you for meeting me, Guyi," Strange said. However, to his bewilderment, Guyi stood up and left. At this moment, a bald woman was pouring tea for him. "You don't have to be so polite," she said. "Ah, so you are the Ancient One?" Stephen Strange was confused. This was different from what he knew. "Yes, it's me. You're welcome, Mr. Strange. Wow, you've had a lot of surgery lately. 7, right?" "Yes, the tea is very good. Can you help me with my hand?" Stephen Strange slowly stretched out his scarred hand. "Oh, why do you think I can help you?" "Can I help you?" Guyi asked. "It was Duke. Duke told me, didn't he?" Stephen Strange stammered. "Then, why didn't he help you? He said, my way wasn't there for him." "What way?" Strange, he questioned, his voice tinged with desperation. "Road?" Guyi responded with a smile. "Do you have a road now? You only see trees, but no forest. There is no road in front of you. I lost everything and bought this one-way ticket, and now you tell me I have nowhere to go?" Stephen Strange felt a wave of despair wash over him. You are a person who sees the world through a narrow lens, and you have been trying to widen this lens all your life. Your way is within this lens, but it is so vast that you cannot imagine, Guyi explained. With that, the Ancient One released Stephen Strange's soul, leading him to experience the infinity of the soul world. You think that the world runs smoothly, and you believe that the material universe is everything. But what is truth? What secrets lie behind what you know? At the source of reality, spirit will be connected with matter, and thoughts will carve reality. This universe is only one of infinite universes, and the world is boundless. Some are beautiful and full of vitality. Some are evil, full of killing. In those dark corners, wild forces are greedily waiting. Who are you? In this multiverse, Mr. Strange. Amid the roar, Stephen Strange returned to reality. "Teach me," he pleaded. "No," Guyi responded firmly. As in the plot, he was kicked out like a dog. "You think I shouldn't have driven him out?" Guyi asked. "It's been 5 hours, and he's still outside. There's a lot of energy in him. Modu replied. Stubbornness, arrogance, and ambition seem familiar, don't they? Guyi mused. He reminds you of Casillas? Modu inquired. I don't want another gifted student to step into the darkness after getting started, Guyi shook her head. I'm just curious, why did Duke send him to us? He can also teach a good student. The road to magic is long and boundless, and you know too little, Modu, Guyi said. His magic system is different from ours. Sometimes I even doubt whether his way is the best way. However, in this world, there is no distinction between orthodoxy and branch. Modu, an arrogant magician himself, knew when to recognize true power. In front of Duke, no matter how arrogant he was, he didn't dare to put on airs. He didn't bother with Duke either. The pages that were stolen are still in the hands of Casillas. If he deciphers the mystery within, he will wipe us all out. The dark forces are getting stronger. Maybe Strange can help us, Modu suggested. End of this chapter. Chapter 377, Dr. Strange succeeds in apprenticeship. Bring him in first, Guyi thought for a moment and agreed. Mordo smiled, turned around, and led the way. At this moment, Stephen Strange was knocking on the door incessantly. Perhaps he was tired, or maybe he had lost hope. He slowly squatted down, looking like a wounded little animal, utterly pitiful. He resembled a dirty-haired poodle that had rolled several times in a muddy pond. Don't lock me out. I can't go anywhere now, he murmured, leaning against the door. Suddenly, the door opened, and he tumbled backward, caught off guard. Despite the embarrassing posture, he still managed to fall down and express his gratitude. Thank you, he said. Mordo took Strange to a simple wooden house. Take a bath, rest for a while, and meditate if you have time. Guyi will summon you later. He then handed him a slip of paper. Shambhala, is there an extra L? Strange asked, puzzled. It's the wireless password here. We are not primitive people, Mordo replied, glancing at their attire, which seemed primitive. But now, it seemed, who were the real primitive people? Stephen Strange looked at the wireless password in his hand, bewildered. The confusion and shock of this day were greater than anything he had experienced in his entire life. Slowly, he took off his watch and placed it on the windowsill. Engraved on it were the words, I love you, Christine. The watch was broken, symbolizing that this relationship was also broken. Putting down the watch meant letting go of the past and welcoming a new future. Duke had said that his path was not in Karazhan, but here. Strange yearned for all knowledge, and after witnessing magic, he became obsessed with it, like a long-dried seedling yearning for the rain. He respected all knowledge and was eager to explore all the unknowns in the world. Maybe he and Christine were like this? Anyway, it was time to forget about the past for a moment. After smelling himself, Stephen Strange showed a disgusted expression. This smell is too stinky. I need to take a shower first. Ugh. He even despised himself. He had been careful and frugal all the way, using even a piece of toilet paper repeatedly and barely filling his stomach with meals, so there was no time for him to take a bath. After taking a shower and cutting his hair and beard, he looked like a handsome man again. No, not middle-aged. He was still very young. At this time, Guyi was talking to Duke about how to communicate with Shenbo. You sent people to me, Guyi said. Yes, Duke replied. Why? I'm curious. Isn't he your student? I just sent him there to slow down the time. What? Guyi frowned. What? Was also a bit confused. Wait, could it be that Guyi didn't see the future? Didn't know that Stephen Strange was her student? Shouldn't it be like in Avengers Endgame, where the Ancient One tells the Hulk, who traveled back to the Battle of New York 5 years earlier, that Stephen Strange is performing surgery a few streets away? She doesn't know? It seems to be the past. Perhaps his arrival has affected something, making it difficult for the mighty Ancient One to peek into the future. Perhaps after he was promoted to demigod? Around 2007, the year when she played Superman, she couldn't see her after that? After all, peeking into the future requires a certain price, and it is not something that can be seen casually, nor is Guyi someone who can see it whenever she wants. Maybe before 2007, she hadn't seen the future, so she didn't know that Stephen Strange would be her student in a few years. Did you see something? Guyi finally came to her senses. Hey, he's just not suitable for my school, and I don't have the patience to be a teacher for others. In comparison, you are more suitable, that's all. Duke didn't explain the truth. Okay. After chatting for a while, the two cut off the mental wave. What did he say? Mordo asked curiously. Gu Yi stood up slowly. He has something to hide, but it's not important. He is really not suit. Huh? Mordo was dumbfounded. Call someone here. Okay, Mordo replied. Duke nodded and left, though he was a bit confused. Duke was hiding something, but at least part of it was true. He was not fit to be a teacher, even though he had 3 students. Recently, he had come up with a new career path called Paladin. He seemed to have discovered a way to compress a profession and an ability into something akin to a data body, instead, which he could then directly instill into a person's body. This method allowed an ordinary person to become a superhero almost instantly. In ancient Chinese martial arts, there was a concept called empowerment, where highly cultivated individuals could pass on their lifetime skills to others, making them instant martial arts masters. However, the masters who performed empowerment would lose their cultivation instantly and could even die of old age. Duke's approach was similar, but not the same. He modularized a piece of ability data and then directly instilled it into ordinary people without any loss to himself. After the indoctrination was completed, he didn't involve himself further, leaving the disciple to explore on their own, occasionally offering guidance. This method was called inheritance, akin to a higher level of life and ideology descending to teach. It was faster and easier. However, Duke was truly not suited to be a teacher. Additionally, their magic schools were indeed different. They borrowed power from dark spaces and other realms. Duke's magic, on the other hand, seemed to come from the world around him, utilizing all the elemental powers and even surpassing the existence of elements. While others collected energy from multiverse spaces to cast spells, Duke directly extracted the energy of nature, transforming it into sharp blades and shields, and even more advanced boundary power. When she first discovered that Leon was Duke's apprentice, she was a little surprised. In this world, there were still beings who could use air as magic. It was then that she truly began to pay attention to Duke. The day passed quickly. Steve had finished explaining the matter and returned to Karazhan. With or without him, the team operated as usual. Tony could act as captain in his absence, even though he was somewhat unconventional. But with Peggy Carter keeping an eye on him, there shouldn't be any trouble. This time, it was just Steve and a little henchman, the Black Widow, Natasha. The illusion of the scene opened again. It was still purification of Stratholme, but it was the moment when the connection ended. That's it. End of this chapter. Chapter 378, The Widow's Request. Before Steve could finish speaking, Duke slapped him across the face. Stop wasting time. Diana and the widow's sister were both taken aback, while Steve, dazed, collapsed to the ground with a thud. As he looked up, he saw a silver Lordaeron advanced version armor, the kind that only the prince's servants could wear. It was far more ornate than the standard Lordaeron guard armor. Yes, it was indeed gorgeous. Given that Lordaeron boasted the strongest comprehensive strength among the 7 kingdoms, appearances mattered. Ha ha ha, Steve, what's wrong with you? Are you exhausted? Before Steve could stand up, a heavy hand slapped his shoulder. Hearing the voice, Steve immediately recognized it. Kelvin, a blond, muscular man, was a good friend. They had joined the prince's entourage together, competed fiercely, and eventually became personal guards. They had fought in the Battle of Stratholme together, tracked down Mal'Ganis with the prince, and miraculously survived. So, this was the identity Duke had arranged for him? Hurry up, Steve. We won. Even though we're almost exhausted, we represent His Highness and cannot disgrace him. Even if you're seriously overdrawn and weak, you have to stand up, Kelvin said, patting Steve hard and making a gesture to pull him up. Unexpectedly, Steve's shoulders suddenly lifted, shaking Kelvin's hands away. This surprised Kelvin quite a bit. Go away, Kelvin. I won't fall, even if I'm tired, Steve said, shaking his shoulders and standing up. Wow, Steve, you've been promoted to a high-ranking paladin? You're really lucky. Kelvin laughed heartily, patting Steve on the back, genuinely happy for his friend. Paladins were like this. Loyalty came first, followed by virtue. While there was competition among them, they were never hostile to each other. A high-level paladin couldn't be a bad guy. The more righteous a person was, the more they could embrace the holy light and advance in strength. Those who were corrupt would be abandoned by the Holy Light and could never achieve high-level strength. Just like Uther, who was killed by two idiots, yet his graveyard still shone with the Holy Light. "You work too hard," Steve replied, following the set tone, and took off his helmet. It was too stuffy. "By the way, how many people did we save? Are the statistics out yet?" After obtaining the inheritance, he had left Arthas's body and returned to reality, so he didn't know the final result. How can it be so fast? Kelvin shook his head and sighed, looking towards the depths of Stratholme. Although we won this battle, the glory of the Holy City is not what it used to be. I really miss the days of training here. Both were paladins, both commoners, initiated in Stratholme by Archbishop Alonce's fall. Those days were the happiest and most fulfilling. Unfortunately, since the death of Archbishop Fall, everything had changed. After a moment of sadness, Kelvin continued, "We won a complete victory this time. About 1,000 citizens died, either becoming undead, poisoning themselves, being killed by undead, or sanctioned by rioters. Although the death toll is still rising, we should be able to save the civilians from 1,000 years ago, right?" Steve patted Kelvin on the shoulder and started walking. "Let's go patrol and make sure there are no rotting corpses hiding in the dark corners of this holy city." "I like that name, haha. Let's go," Kelvin laughed, following with his big sword on his back. "Speaking of which, you did well. We took a risk and it paid off." Then he sighed again. "You're the only one who advanced. I haven't even touched the threshold yet." Steve smiled and comforted him, his role being that of a high-level paladin, though he used to be intermediate. The two joked with each other as they patrolled the depths of Stratholme. Prince Arthas stood on a high vantage point, overlooking the battlefield where efforts were underway to treat the wounded. The battlefield had shifted from the city gate area to the square, which offered a wid or space. Groups of 100 people each were separated from adjacent groups. Without Mal'Ganis causing trouble, there weren't as many undead being transformed quickly, allowing the mid-level paladins to focus on their treatments. They used potions and holy water to manage moderate plague infections, gradually transforming them into mild infections to sustain life. Each group was guarded by 5 fighters to prevent any transformed undead from causing chaos. Despite being scattered, the positioning, composition, and direction of these groups indicated they were elite units. In the event of a large-scale rebellion, these scattered teams could quickly regroup. Arthas had noticed the conversation between Kelvin and Steve early on. These were 2 mid-level paladins. The original plan was for the mid-level paladins to save people, while he and his mentor led 100 high-level paladins and 100 high-level fighters into Stratholme. However, after some time, he realized that 2 mid-level paladins were following him. It was annoying, but he didn't have time to worry about them. Despite their lower strength, they fought fiercely. Sometimes, during searches, they would miss something, and these 2 would handle it, dealing with the aftermath. This made a group of high-level fighters and paladins quite unhappy. Unexpectedly, after the lone army broke in, one of them was promoted to a higher rank. Should he say they were skilled and bold? Steve? Kelvin? Arthas frowned slowly, as if pondering something. "Why? Are those 2 personal guards of yours special?" Jaina noticed Arthas's gaze, but having left alone to investigate the teleportation circle, she didn't know about these 2 followers. "Well, it's interesting," Arthas replied. After a week, the statistics were in. A total of 400 people were cured, 700 died in battle, and the remaining 900 died within the week. Some people were destined not to be saved. After a week of recovery, Steve received the prince's warrant. "You actually became the captain of a team of 500 people and are being sent to the Sentinel barrier on the Western Front to lead them in sniping the Scourge." "Why am I the vice captain?" Kelvin curled his lips in displeasure. "Because you are weak," Steve thought. Perhaps this was what Duke had arranged for him. If weak. Kelvin was furious, and they rushed forward and fought together. In reality, Natasha pestered Duke to make a request. "You also want to inherit?" End of this chapter. Chapter 39. Keen Natasha? You also want to inherit? Duke was dumbfounded. "What inheritance do you want?" Natasha rolled her beautiful eyes. "How do I know? Just look at it. It's whatever suits me anyway." Suitable. Just stare at me and think about it, Duke frowned, deep in thought. Warrior, paladin, hunter, rogue, priest, death knight, shaman, mage, warlock, monk, druid, demon hunter. 12 professions flashed through his mind. Which one would be suitable? It doesn't have to be from Warcraft. The main thing is that I just inherited a paladin and got used to it. First of all, he can only get those from the magic department, not the physical department. Well, pure physics. For example, paladins are judged to be in the Holy Magic series. Steve is not limited to melee combat based on paladin skills. He can also create a light whip to ensnare people and use holy bombardment and other long-range attack methods. First of all, the 3 professions of warrior, hunter, and monk are excluded. Warriors rely on anger, pure physics. Hunters are also armed, with the addition of a few traps and trained pets. Monks rely on true chi, but true chi is not included in the category of magic. When it comes to monks, Duke has to complain. Undead can use holy light, which is not surprising. The standpoint of the holy light comes from the user himself. If there is no doubt in his heart, the holy light exists. Sir Zeliek, one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, can still cast the holy light spell when he is fighting against the Alliance horde as a death knight. A death knight. The holy light does not originate from one's own body and does not rely on the meridians, but true chi must flow around the body through the meridians. An undead, whose body is long dead, and whose meridians are also dead. That kind of half-flesh, half-skeleton, how can it flow through the whole body through the meridians? Isn't it halfway? Did I miss it? Not to mention those that are all bones and have no meridians at all. After all the calculations, the only ones suitable for her are rogues and demon hunters. Demon hunters belong to fell magic, but it may make the widow's eyes turn green, blaze, and blind, which is too ugly. Then, only the rogue is left, but only limited to the subtlety talent. Is to make the enemy lose the ability to resist by bleeding and poison. And outlaw is basically a warrior, even a warrior with 2 swords in one hand. Only subtlety, relying on shadow energy, is counted into the shadow magic sequence. Death from above, shadow strike, nightblade, shadow blades, shadow dance, eviscerate, etc. all rely on superimposed shadow energy. When the 5 layers of shadow energy enter the enemy's body, even the Man of Steel will be crushed in one blow. Of course, you can't just choose rogues. It is also possible to pass on the magic professions of other games, but Duke has a bad taste. Yes, how about the inheritance of Rogue? Duke said. Rogue? That's Adams, right? Natasha thought for a while and guessed it. She is indeed a smart widow. After all, Adam's occupation was not mentioned in the illusion of the scene, and she could actually see it. Yes, it's him. Very good, I like it very much. By the way, did he really disappear when he vanished? It wasn't light reflection, or the ninja's camouflage? Natasha asked worriedly. If it is the ninja's camouflage technique, it's useless. If the light reflects, it depends on equipping clothes, and it doesn't have much effect. But looking at the primitive appearance of the Middle Ages, it seems that clothes that reflect light cannot be produced. Besides, even if there were, Adams wasn't completely covered in black robes. Of course not, don't worry, Duke said. Although he didn't know how the rogue operated in reality, Doubtson Carlos's shadow step moved in the shadow and suddenly appeared behind the target after crossing a distance. It should have escaped into the shadow world, which can... The mirrored space could also be understood as a thief's domain. The only downside is that the rogue profession lacks any special scene battles. Unlike the paladins, who have the purification of Stratholme to temper their hearts, thieves have no such grand scenes. There are a few special small professional tasks for thieves, but none are significant enough to support a full scene. The only notable place is the Holy Land of Thieves, Ravenholt Manor in the Hillsbrad foothills, which is a place of aspiration for thieves. Then there is the Orange Dagger mission in patch 4.3, Golard, Twilight of the Dragon King, and Tyriange, Ancient Nightmare. That's good. So, when will the inheritance begin? Natasha asked happily. Hold on a minute. Why are you in such a hurry? Are you feeling the pressure like Steve? Duke rubbed his nose, feeling a bit embarrassed. He hadn't yet drawn the talent of thieves, but with so many points available, he could designate them as needed. So, he just spent the points. Of course, that's nothing. No, I just think it's fun, Natasha said. Fun? Duke stared at her. Then I'll throw you in to play with Steve. It's just fun. The most important thing is getting stronger, Natasha admitted with a smile. Duke rolled his eyes speechlessly. Then you go on your own. It will take at least half a month. I'll notify you when the time comes. 1 day is enough to create the purification of Stratholme scene. Duke intended to create 2 plots, Ravenholt Manor and Strategy of the Dragonfather's Fang for Natasha to experience. Don't you think it's just fun? This time, it will make you cry from all the fun. Let you experience the horror of being dominated by Deathwing. Thinking of this, Duke felt like laughing, a sinister smile forming on his lips. Okay, I'll go first. Glancing at Steve, who was still in the army, Natasha turned her head and left. The captain wasn't here, so she had to fight Hydra. Damn Sitwell, if you don't say anything, see if I don't knock your front teeth out. You want to leave now, Miss Bai? Duke asked. What do you think? Natasha turned her head away, her eyes full of different wavelengths, which was very stylish. Seeing this, Duke was stunned. Cuff. No, Diana is still here. You have to pay money to do business. Whatever money you want, I can get it here. Another wave of waves. Ahem, I'll talk about it after I think it over. You go first. Duke hurriedly pushed her away. He already felt a strong, murderous intent somewhere. What a goblin. Stark Industries building, inside the temporary Avengers base. And Sitwell, I'm going to beat him up. Ah? Why did you hit him? Tony looked at Natasha curiously. She was really in good shape. Did she suffer? It's so hot. Didn't he go to see Steve off? Could it be that he was really in Karazhan? Maria Hill came up in the elevator. He has already explained the position of Baron Sterak. End of this chapter. Chapter 380. Want to meet Wanda? Maria Hill stepped out of the elevator, her expression serious. He has already revealed Baron Strucker's location. Revealed? Natasha Romanoff placed her hands on her hips, visibly annoyed. I haven't even had the chance to beat him up yet. Why would you want to beat him up? Maria Hill asked, curious. Just because I felt like it, Natasha shrugged. Maria Hill nodded, choosing not to press further. She handed a tablet to Peggy Carter, who was in charge while Captain America was away. Here, Castle Strucker's coordinates. All right, team, it's time for us to move out, Peggy Carter announced, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. Shouldn't we wait for our captain to come out? Natasha inquired. Peggy shook her head. No need. We don't know when he'll be done, and we need to act quickly to prevent any potential mishaps. Understood, Natasha replied. Meanwhile, in Karazhan, a smile played on Duke's lips. So they want to meet Wanda and Pietro, huh? Interesting. Maybe I'll have Quicksilver join in and see which speedster is faster. 2 days later, Steve Rogers emerged from his training. Wow, you've really gone Super Saiyan, Duke remarked, eyeing Steve's short blonde hair. The transformation was a clear sign that Steve had reached a new level of mastery with the holy light. His pupils now had a golden hue, and a platinum glow seemed to flow beneath his skin. This month felt like a year, Steve said, stretching. Actually, it's only been 2 days, Duke corrected him. Really? Steve's eyes widened in surprise. It seemed the time in the training realm was out of sync with reality. Your team has been busy while you were away, Duke informed him. Is there a problem? Steve asked, concerned. Nothing major, just a few unexpected developments, Duke reassured him. But you should head back. They could use your help. Thanks. I'll treat you to dinner another day, Steve said gratefully before hurrying out of Karazhan. Diana walked out with a smile. Why don't you want to collect your reward now? Duke covered his ears, embarrassed. He's a guy. I'm not interested in that kind of reward. Oh, so you admit it? Diana teased, her eyes twinkling. Duke sighed, feeling the soreness in his waist. What did I admit? I didn't admit anything. Don't twist my words. On the Quinjet, the team was in high spirits despite the recent skirmishes. Hey guys, Dr. Zhao is on her way from Seoul. Barton needs comprehensive treatment, Tony Stark announced. Clint Barton, still nursing his injuries, managed a weak smile. Doesn't it feel good to be back in action, tracking down Hydra since S.H.I.E.L.D. collapsed? Tony glanced at Loki's scepter. It's great to be sweeping bases with everyone, but with this scepter found, it's the end of the line. Natasha finished for him. We need to figure out what it's used for. Those 2 enhanced individuals are no small threat. When did Strucker start producing ability enhancers? Tony wondered aloud. Before it goes back to Asgard, I want to study it. Just a few days, and I'll return it before I say goodbye. You'll be here for the celebration, right? Thor asked, already looking forward to the victory festivities. Of course, victory must be celebrated with a carnival, Tony agreed. The ether particles were already stored in Karazhan. After much discussion with Odin, Thor had decided that if they found the Mind Stone, it would be taken back to Asgard. This would serve as bait to lure Thanos. The reality gem was in Karazhan, the time gem in Kamartaj, the space and mind gems in Asgard, the power gem in Xandar, and the soul gem in Vormir. For now, only Duke and Gamora knew the location of the Soul Stone. I hope this time, the matter of Hydra and the Chitauri will be over, Bucky Barnes said, voicing what everyone was thinking. So all right, Carnival, Falcon laughed. The fighter plane landed smoothly on the roof of the Stark Industrial Building. Everyone disembarked one by one, and at that moment Steve also returned. Steve, everyone cheered. You look different. Have you dyed your hair? Bucky teased, reaching out to touch Steve's head. Unfortunately, Steve dodged. Now you are no match for me, Steve said with a grin. You seem to be coated with a layer of gold, Falcon joked, looking Steve up and down. Okay, enough about me. I heard you guys did something big, Steve asked. Ah, Falcon replied. Who is she? Steve turned his head and noticed an unfamiliar Asian woman speaking in Korean. Korean? I'm Helen Zhao. Hello, Captain. I'm your fan. Helen Zhao quickly switched to English and shook hands with Steve. If Duke were here, he would definitely laugh, thinking, aren't you a fan of Thor? Hello, Steve greeted her warmly. At that moment, he noticed Barton lying in the laboratory and hurried over. Barton, are you injured? Oh, Captain, I'm so glad to see you. You have changed your skin, Barton joked while sipping a drink. You play too many games, Steve smiled. His body is injured, but he's fine. The artificial biological tissue is being generated, and it will take about 1 to 2 hours, Helen Zhao explained. That's good. You have a good rest. Steve patted Barton's shoulder and turned to the others. Okay, who can tell me what happened? One by one, they explained the events. So you took over Strucker's castle, got Loki's scepter, and then encountered 2 enhanced individuals. What about their information? Steve asked. Maria Hill stepped forward with a tablet. Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, twins. They were orphaned when a bomber destroyed their home when they were 10 years old. Sokovia has a difficult history. What about their abilities? Steve inquired. His metabolism is fast, and he has exceptional body temperature control. Her specialty is interfering with nerve conduction, and she has telekinetic powers to control minds, Maria Hill explained. Steve paused, processing the information. He's fast, she's weird, Maria Hill summarized succinctly. They'll show up again, Steve predicted. Agreed. The document says they voluntarily joined the experiment. Crazy, Maria Hill added. Indeed, Steve smiled. What kind of monster would let a German scientist experiment on themselves to protect their country? We're not at war, Captain, Maria Hill reminded him. Yes, but they are, Steve replied solemnly. End of this chapter.